Hey guys, I'm Greg, founder of Buildcamp, where we teach aspiring founders how to build and launch their startups with Bubble. Back in 2017, I was super curious about building a startup. I didn't really know how to code. I could string together a few things, but I discovered Bubble back in the very, very early days when no code wasn't really a term. And I actually went on to build a successful two-sided marketplace built entirely on Bubble and Stripe for payments. And I managed to raise venture capital. I went on to build a successful company. Now that was a long time ago. Look at where we are today. And basically through this course, I really want to dig under the hood, answer your potential questions, show you around the editor and show you just what is possible with the power of Bubble. So let's jump into the first module and let's talk about what is Bubble and what can I actually build. So the first thing to understand is that Bubble is producing code. So when you hear the term no code, I don't feel like it's a very suitable label for what this is. When you hear the term, you might think there's no code involved. What it actually means is you don't have to write the syntax in a code editor. Bubble does that for us. What are the benefits of this? Well, the benefits of this is that it is code that is shared amongst a user base of millions of users and their companies that they've built. So that code is clean, that code works really well. Okay, so when you hear the term no code, it's the process of creating our software where we don't actually have to write syntax, it's done for us. Can we inject code into Bubble? Yes, we can. Bubble is basically a blank canvas, super powerful. It's a one of a kind. There's no other code. There's no other no code startup quite like Bubble that combines everything from the visual design to the data to the logic to the APIs all in one. Okay, so it's a super interesting and powerful product, and it allows startups and their founders to build their startups basically within a matter of weeks or 2 months, depending on how technical you need it to be. Okay, and it's comprised of 3, some people would say 4 core areas, and we're going to dive into all of these core areas in detail and have a look at how we would build something like a SaaS product, a two-sided marketplace, a financial app, a productivity app, and so forth. And guys, you can do all of these things. As I said, Bubble's spitting out code. You can build any kind of startup you want, all right? But we will talk about the limitations, because the limitations are more on the infrastructure side. Like Airbnb wouldn't run on Bubble because Bubble is in their own infrastructure layer in a box, all right? Airbnb would need something, would need their own infrastructure team. So that's the kind of difference between no code and if you were a coder working at a company. If you plan on scaling to millions across multiple regions, you can't stay within that box. However, you can easily run a company up to 100,000 users. Buildcamp has almost 20,000 users now. No, they're not always concurrent users, but I manage those users absolutely fine. Would I ever see a need to move off of Bubble? For what I do, education in this space, courses, absolutely not. I've built like a mini version of Udemy. But I can scale to hundreds of thousands of people if I wanted to, okay? So the 4 core parts are basically the design side. So you're able to drag elements onto a page, such as an input box, a container, buttons, that kind of thing. You can style them to your heart's content. You can work within your own design system, and you can string these together to build your interfaces, right? The things that people interact with. The dashboards, the web pages, authentication, that kind of thing. Then you have the data. So Bubble has a SQL database built in. There's nothing you need to do. This is what I love. There are a few no-code startups coming through now who want to separate the database from the interface, from the workflows. I actually don't like that. I prefer everything to be kind of in a box per se. You create your app, you name it, and your environment is up and running. Now, if you're a coder, that wouldn't be the case. If you're a coder, there are dependencies to install. It might take you a full day to get up and running. It's far more difficult and far more technical to understand how everything pieces together. But with Bubble, one click, you're ready to build. right? So you can build little MVPs, ideas within a day, basically. And we'll go through how to get started shortly. So you have your visual application designer or editor, and you can piece together all the elements you need to make an interactive user interface. The database side of things, that might be slightly more challenging to understand because there are relationships, but the way to think of a database within Bubble is much like an Excel spreadsheet with different tabs across the bottom. So your first spreadsheet tab might be users with user data, names, addresses, date of birth, creation date in terms of the user account. And then there might be another tab that has products, and then there's a key that creates a relationship between a user and a number of products, and products would have an image, a price, that kind of thing. Or instead of products, it could be projects. Instead of projects, it could be listings. And we're going to dive in soon and have a look at that in more detail. And Bubble gives us a visual representation of that database. Next, we have the logic layer. Okay, so that's the workflow. So when a user interacts with a button or anything on the page, how do we make it talk to the database? How do we make it do things? How do we make it change states? How do we make it change visually, navigate to different pages, do calculations? And that's the logic layer. And this is one of the most powerful features of Bubble. This is what Bubble solved very early on, and this is why Bubble is a unicorn in the no-code space. It is mega powerful. And yes, if you are a coder and you know JavaScript, you can inject your own JavaScript functions to run whatever you like within Bubble as well. And the last thing is APIs. So APIs are a way for different software companies to talk to each other. So a payment provider I'll always use is Stripe, the biggest payment provider for startups in the world. I'd argue probably the biggest startup for payments across all sectors, okay? And they allow basically me to take payments, subscriptions to the nth degree, the nth detail from customers, and they deal with all of the banking side of stuff, the infrastructure. So Stripe solves the infrastructure, and I just use their tools and services to build the kind of payment services I want within my site. Okay, so that's one example of an API. Another example of an API is, for instance, ChatGPT. You can use the backend services to build your own version of ChatGPT, all right? So it's a way for your Bubble app to talk to external service providers. And what can I build in Bubble? What can I build? Well, I mentioned early on that you can basically build anything, but that's not to say you would build anything. And that's a distinction, okay? I would always start, if I think about the early days of Airbnb, they would have maybe started with a WordPress, Air Bed and Breakfast. Let's think about the early days of Notion or the early days of Uber Eats. It would have started a lot more simpler, and basically they would have had a head start of the competition if they started with Bubble, because it allows you to build versions of Airbnb, Uber, on-demand services, allows you to build social networks or social network functionality to incorporate into your app. It allows you to build marketplaces, CRM, SaaS apps, finance apps, AI apps, anything. There's an API that exists as well. The chances are that you can use it in Bubble. So you can tap into, for instance, I'm in England and I can tap into transport service APIs and build my own mapping application for people to get from A to B, such as City Mapper if you're in the UK, around the city. So in terms of what are the restrictions, it's more on the infrastructure side. As I mentioned earlier, Bubble is an infrastructure layer. It takes all the complexity out and it uses natural language for you to be able to build your app, which is far more easy to understand, all right? But it's very powerful as well. We're going to have a look at that. So if I wanted to build something like Salesforce, well, I can do that. I can do that. If I just understand what kind of data Salesforce, all the data structure Salesforce uses, and the interactive element, I can build a version of Salesforce. But Salesforce is a massive company, probably with thousands of developers, so it wouldn't scale to the Salesforce size, and that's the difference. Same with Notion. I can build productivity apps, I can build CRMs, I can build two-sided marketplaces is a great example of what people have been able to build successfully in Bubble, myself included. And we're also going to look at, what do all applications have in common? Because most applications are actually very similar, very, very similar. It's a way for users to sign up to something. There's authentication, there's the database side, the data structure, resetting passwords, privacy, conditional statements. They're actually all very similar. They differ in certain ways. But a marketplace, is kind of similar to Uber Eats, on-demand services. Very, very similar. The data structure, you'll be surprised how similar the data structure is. Uber Eats will have they'll have users, they'll have customers, they'll have drivers, they'll have restaurants. Within the restaurants, they'll have a menu. Within the menu, they'll have items. So not that difficult. And then, as I mentioned earlier, with AI, can we build a version of ChatGPT, which is a prompt and an output? I've got another video on YouTube where I demonstrate how to build like a recipe app in half an hour. It's the power of no code. We don't have to mess around with code syntax and that kind of thing. We can just get going. Just wanted to reiterate the app composition side. And this isn't just no code, but this is all apps. So what do all apps, if we zoom out from a bird's eye view, what are the silos involved within building? So we have the front end that the user interacts with in their browser. Okay, that's the app design. That's where the designs are, and the information changes because we have static and we have dynamic elements. And we'll look at how users can upload their image, how they can see and not see certain things based on their role or their permissions within a particular company. All apps have workflows. You've heard of CRUD, create, read, update, delete. That's what we can do in Bubble. All right, create data, display that data in a myriad of different ways. We can edit that data and we can delete that data. So when people talk about the distinction between a website and an application, websites don't really have CRUD, applications do. This is kind of the difference, where a website is more showing static information. An application shows dynamic information that can change based on user behavior. And of course, we need somewhere to store that data, which is in a database. In terms of what is the framework to an application, and earlier on I mentioned all apps have very similar things. Okay, so when you learn Bubble, it gives you the power and opportunity to build kind of any kind of app. Most people then, they learn Bubble and they choose to build a marketplace or a SaaS app or a fintech kind of service or an AI app or a Web3 kind of app. And basically, if you have a core understanding, you can go off and build any kind of app just like that. So all apps need authentication. They need users, people to interact with. They need create, read, update, delete. This is what an app is. Search is becoming far, far more important these days. So users need search. You need email for a way to interact with people. They sign up, you send them a welcome email, and we'll talk about what are the various API services available. And API services, like email services, are becoming very straightforward these days. All of them, or most of them, now have no-code editors themselves. Payment providers such as Stripe, and you've obviously used PayPal in the past as well. You can integrate PayPal. So a person doesn't need to know their card details. They can just it's called OAuth. You can just authenticate them through a button click and PayPal does the rest. Okay. You need admin dashboards so you know what's going on within your app. And within the admin dashboard, you need account management so you can manage your data and view your analytics. So we're going to jump into the Bubble editor very shortly and look at the following. We're going to look at how to set up a canvas, containers, visual elements. We're going to look at how we organize our visual elements in basically an element tree. We're going to have a look at styles, super, super important. This is a sort of a specialty area. I work with design systems a lot within Bubble. I'm actually shortly presenting in New York at BubbleCon 2023. We'll be looking at reusable elements, how to reuse code with basically an industry term called dry, do not repeat yourself. This also applies to no code. Build once and use everywhere, and then you can edit from one area. Responsive design, also a big area that I focus on, as well as SEO. So if we jump just into the editor, all right, let's just have a quick look around. So up in the left-hand side, if I click on this drop-down, we can see that we have pages and we have folders. So we can create as many pages as we like and link off to those pages. We can also send data between pages. Down here, we have things like reusable elements. Okay, so if I just show you changing a page, I've got a page here just to demonstrate input forms, which we'll get to. I've just changed my page, and I can also go to my reusable elements. Now, the beautiful thing about reusable elements, this is just a pretend company called Collab. Reusable elements means that they are kind of like their own pages where you can build we can build design and functionality, conditional statements, custom states, and then you can just take that module and drop it into any page and have that run as it would. The good thing about a reusable element is that, again, you build in one area and you just maintain it in one place, but you can display it and drop it on any page. So those are the pages up on the left. I'm just going to go back to index. Down the left-hand side, when I talked about those big silos or core components of what an app is, well, this is where they live. So we have the design side, we have the workflow side, which is blank. But if we did have workflows, these would be little blocks where we basically, through a step-by-step process, instruct, for instance, how a person should sign up. And that would be very easy, actually. Let me show you an example. So this is just a pages loaded event. And let's just pretend it was a button click. But if it was a button click to sign up, we would just, Bubble gives us all of these options down here in terms of actions. When a button is clicked, what should happen? So we can say sign a user up, and Bubble have done the code for us. So all we need to do is connect the inputs. Where do they type their email input? And the option would show up here under an input. Where would they type their password? The option would be down here. And then Bubble gives us various options, such as remember their email address. Maybe we have an input field where we ask them what their first name is or what their company name is. Or we can also attach the data here. And what happens when a user clicks the button is that Bubble saves this data to the database, and you will be able to actually see it visually in your database. Let's have a look at the database. So here is a user table, basically. Bubble calls them data types. And here is what looks like an Excel spreadsheet. And this is where our users and data would live. Now we're going to go ahead and actually sign some people up to the app and then look at how we can visualize this data and even manipulate it as we would in an Excel spreadsheet. We can open a row of data and we can update data as a developer, which is super interesting. Now the thing to remember, or the thing to understand about the databases that Bubble provides, we actually have two. If you come from a code background, you obviously know what staging means. Bubble calls it version test. So when we're building our app, we have a test database and we have a live database, and they are separate. So when we're building out new modules, when we're testing stuff, we're not creating live data, we're creating test data. So we'd have two versions of the site then. We would have, for instance, Buildcamp. My domain is buildcamp.io. You can go there now, look at all the courses, and that is the live database, okay? But I also have buildcamp.io/version test, where I'm testing new stuff. And it might look slightly different to buildcamp.io. Now, my Buildcamp version test is protected, password protected, so you won't actually be able to run anything or see anything, but it allows me as the developer and founder of the company to be able to work on product development and get through my product roadmap without messing up my live database. All right, so that's very, very useful. Then continuing down here, we're not going to go into this too much detail, but we do have an area called styles. And within styles is where we would set things like our colors. All right, I would set primary colors, contrast color of the text. We would set our border colors, and we can create what's called variables here, where I would assign it a label, neutral 100 background, then I would give it a color, which means that now on the design side, I can change the color of this text. I'd bring up the property editor here, and I would then choose from a swatch all of my saved colors, or I can just move this along and change whatever color I like here as well. So Bubble is, you're starting to see that it's a professional system. What native developers would do in terms of creating styles and variables, you can do that in Bubble as well. It's just visualized in a way that's much more user-friendly. We have plugins, which enables the extensibility of Bubble a lot. So if I open up plugins, there are thousands of plugins. So here's an API connector that involves you to connect to all sorts of products and services. This is my number one plugin that I use. We've got Google material icons. We've got plugins to run JavaScript. We've got multi-select drop-down elements. We've got progress bar elements. Bubble created this themselves. We can see it used on 327,000 apps. We've got chart elements. We've got alerts, calendars, you name it, guys. If you can think of a API service, there's probably a plugin for this. If I had to search, let's search maybe OpenAI. Here we go. So in terms of AI apps, do you need to understand how the actual API works to pull this data? Well, no, you don't. You can just use a plugin that another developer has created. Some are paid, some are free. But look at all of these, OpenAI, ChatGPT. So you can pull these in to your own apps in a few button clicks. You don't really have to understand how the API works because it's done for you. Another developer has gone and built it and has made it available to you. All right, how powerful is that? Click to install the app, click to install the plugin. Now I've got a pipeline to OpenAI and ChatGPT to start building out the UI for my app. And ChatGPT is basically the brain, and I can extract data from it, save it to my database, or just link directly to ChatGPT and use that as a database, really. So that's the plugin section. Then we have the settings section, which we won't go through, but there's basic things like setting up your domain, setting up some sort of global SEO stuff, collaboration with other developers. So I've run a very busy agency in the past. I don't do it anymore, focus on education now, but when I ran an agency, there are 7 of us all working on the same app. So a bit like GitHub with traditional developers, where you can basically pull down changes from a branch. Bubble has the same. It allows professional developers to work together all under one roof. And now we're talking about 7 times the power, as opposed, Bubble was initially built for single founders, now it's built for teams. All right, and it has a log section, so you know exactly what is happening in terms of server usage. People always say to me, Greg, what can Bubble scale? Now this is kind of an odd question. It's very general. It's like saying, can Elon Musk are his trucks fast? Well, it's in context to what? Are his trucks fast in context to other trucks? Or are they fast in terms of, if we compare it to a car, or what about a cheetah or a jumbo jet? Sorry, like an F-16 fighter jet. So you always need context when asking, does Bubble scale, does no code scale? But I've already talked about this. It depends on what you're building. If it is, you're trying to build Google Earth with Bubble, it's not a great fit. Okay, it's really not a great fit. I at Buildcamp have built sort of course related stuff, course modules. It's a perfect use case for Bubble. It doesn't have a ton of concurrent users. I mean, it is popular, but you're looking at sort of concurrent users and you're looking at infrastructure. Doesn't need, are you servicing people around the world in the tens of millions? Well, then maybe you can move off Bubble at some stage. But it's not something I would ever advise a person to think about too early unless you've built, if you are a successful entrepreneur who have built coded startups in the past, you're allowed to ask this question. If you are new to development work, you're not allowed to ask this question because you need to prove that your company works first. Okay, when I built my first two-sided marketplace and raised venture capital, I didn't say, not sure if I should be using Bubble because does it scale? I went and proved the business case. I took money from customers and I built something that was growing. I proved the use case. All right. It was going to take me many, many years to get to a stage where I'm like, site's blowing up, doesn't really work, too many concurrent users. The chances of you getting there are slim, but it is possible. And I still to this day have not heard of a single company, and I know thousands and thousands have passed through Buildcamp, that has actually come off Bubble, and some of these companies are in the tens of millions of revenue per year. Okay, so it just depends on the type of company that you're building? Is it mega resource infrastructure intensive from day one? Then Bubble's not for you. Are you connecting people through a two-sided marketplace or financial app, or something like that, or CRM, where it doesn't have this sort of infrastructure intensity? If so, start on Bubble. You'd be stupid not to. Don't hire money and blow it on developers. Build your MVP, and I can guarantee you that you'll probably end up just staying on Bubble for the foreseeable future. And Bubble is chipping away at the technology all the time. It's getting faster. One of its drawbacks has been page load speed, but they are fixing that. Server-side rendering will soon be a thing. Okay, so it's not something you should worry about too much. And then, so we have the UI builder here, guys. We have the UI builder on this tab on the left, and then we have the responsive design tab over here, where it has various breakpoints where we can look at to see what our design looks like at mobile widths. Now, I haven't done any responsive work here, which is why it looks funky. But if I wanted to, then I can just very quickly add some left-right padding of 16, 16. I'm just jumping in and showing you what's possible. What I could also do, don't pay too much attention. I'm just giving you a quick example of how it feels to build in Bubble. I can say when page width is less than 576, then I'm going to instruct the text size, the font size, sorry, I'm going to change that to 24. No, let's change this to 48. There we go there. Okay, so very quickly I added some padding, and I'm just instructing the text size to change when I get down to mobile sizes. And there we go, mobile responsive, guys. It's that quick. This is, again, one of the things I teach. I have a course called Buildcamp that dives into this to professional standard, how to take apps that look great on desktop all the way down to mobile sizes based on Bootstrap, which is industry standard, an industry standard framework for design, spacing, sizing, breakpoints, that kind of thing. So this is a UI builder and a responsive tab. And then you have your visual elements, have text, buttons. If I wanted a button on this page, I would simply pick it up, drag it, and you can see the little line there, drop it where it needs to be. The next thing I'd do is style that button. So I'd say, give me a primary large. I've done this in advance, so I know what they are. Or maybe give me a secondary large, something that stands out. And then I could say something like sign up. After that, I could add my workflow, and I could say sign the user up. And if I did have inputs, this is what I mentioned earlier. This is where we would string it together. So those are your visual elements. And if we just scan through, we have icons, links, images, shapes, alerts. We have videos, guys. You can drop in YouTube videos. You can also connect to a third-party video service provider. There's one called Mux. MUX. Udemy uses Mux. Many companies use Mux. You can use Mux as well. You can have users upload 4K videos, 8K videos straight into the service Mux, and then you can pull the data and you can track where they are watching their videos. You have HTML. If you know HTML and you know a bit of CSS, or you can write your own HTML, drag this element, drop it on the page, and create a HTML module that does something that maybe Bubble doesn't do, but you'll be hard pressed to find something that Bubble hasn't created. We have mapping. Absolutely love mapping. I teach a course called Marketplace Camp, where it's basically a version of Airbnb, and it shows you how to build Airbnb, the end-to-end process, from searching for properties around the world, to visually representing it on a map, to clicking on a map, to filtering between dates, all of that good stuff. And we'll have a look at that. And then we have beneath that, if I install a plugin, they'll show up just beneath these ones here as well. Then we have containers, groups. So this is a group here. Grouping is a way to keep elements in place and to order and position them. So Bubble uses Bootstrap themselves. Sorry, not Bootstrap. Bubble uses Flexbox. Just call it Flex for short, and it's very, very powerful, and it allows you to basically change the order of things. So if I head over to the layout tab, I can change this from a column to a row. Obviously, it doesn't look good. Column was top to bottom. I can change it to a fixed layout, drag things around to position them where I want. I can say, put this icon to the bottom or put it to the previous or send it to the right-hand side and so forth. So we'd need a group, we'd apply that to a group, and then the child elements within the group would be repositioned along the page. We have pop-ups, we have repeating groups. Love repeating groups. Why? Because they allow us to display data from the database in a list. And that's all a database is. It's a list of rows. And in a repeating group, we can set up basically how to pull all this data in and visualize the data and create functionality around it, okay? I'm not going to go through all of them, guys. We have table elements, input forms. There's the input there. If I drop it in and I say, well, I've styled that already. This is where I could say email address. And I can change the content format to email address, which creates form validation, which makes sure that a user is typing in an email address and not some nonsense. So we can set up these parameters to make sure that we're collecting clean data. And I can just delete that when I'm done with it. But yeah, date and time pickers. So we can create really interesting, if we have a listing, an Airbnb listing, the date and time pickers allow us to select a start date and end date. And then we can say, well, that's 5 days and 7 hours. And then we can create a calculation for price for a listing for that particular time period. I mean, it's endless what you can do. Okay, but let's dive in and actually have a look at these visual elements and at these containers to see what they look like and how it feels to put them onto the canvas, okay? Then we'll get into the database and then we'll get into the workflow side. So if we go to visual elements first, all right, and I'm going to preview this page. And when I preview the page, it's a preview of what it looks like when the site's deployed, basically. The only difference being I have version test here, which means that only I have access to it. Okay, so we have our text, and with text, we have text styles. We can drag and drop any text we like, okay? So if I grab some text, drop it in there. Hey, nice to see you. I then have set up some styles, and this also ties into SEO basically. Okay, here's my SEO here. I have an H2 tag for this. H3 all the way down to body large, etc. I can also just detach the style and I can find a font that I really like, such as Arial. I don't use Arial. I use Inter for most things, Inter, but I can change this to anything I like, Saul Sans, and so forth. But aside from, one of the things I teach basically is, well, there's two major parts of this. Yes, it's how to use Bubble, but moreover, how do you build apps end to end? What are the important components of app building? What does security look like? What does styling look like? How do we build a coherent looking application using consistent styles, using a particular design system? This is what I teach across my apps. Okay, so it's not the case of, oh, I've learned Bubble, now I can build award-winning apps that scale to millions of users. There are many other things to learn, all right? Many other things to learn. But obviously understanding Bubble from the design, workflow, and database side will at least get you to create functional stuff. And then as functional, well, then you move on to things like performance, SEO, etc. And guys, don't let this put you off, because you can learn through one of my courses, such as Beginner's Camp. It takes some people 2 to 3 days to get through, and they are learning or getting an introduction to all of these concepts. Within 2 to 3 days, they have built a productivity app dashboard with a lot of users working together within teams. That's how fast it is. So don't let it put you up. I'm talking about a real sort of professional standard. It does take a bit of time. It's not just about Bubble, but it's about understanding design systems, understanding security, and all the rest. But no code will get you there a lot faster than traditional coding. So these are your visual elements. All right, I'm just going to show you here. So here are your buttons. Look, when I hover over a button, we have primary, medium, primary, large, iconography. We have links. So I can click on this link and it'll open up a new tab, or it will link within the same tab. Here I have my particular styles. Won't talk about that just yet. Here's an external link, so Google Fonts. Okay. Just going to close these guys up here. We have images. So, and we have image rendering. So we can allow users to upload any kind of image. Here's one called Betterfly, a company I made up. And here is a user image down here. Notice the shapes. We can force shapes to be cut in the various aspect ratios that we want. 3:2, square, 1:1. We can cut circles. We can have sort of rounded edges on a square. Regardless of what a user uploads, we can force all of these particular shapes. So it looks really nice. We can have alerts. Look what happens when I click on test alert. This is an alert. So feedback to a user that an action has run successfully. Here's a video. All I did was copy from this channel. All I did was copy one of my video IDs, dropped it into the visual elements, the video visual element, and now we have a video. HTML element. Here is a little piece of code I copied from Stripe to enable payment services. Here's sort of subscriptions. $20, $32. If I hit subscribe, it's actually going to take me off to Stripe to ask you for your card details. Amazing. Here is mapping, guys. Look at this. Look at this. Mapping. And I'm guessing you're asking, can we show positions on the map, properties, that kind of thing? Can we customize that? Yes, we can. And this is Google Maps. Bubble has a great integration with Google Maps. You can do anything with Google Maps. Google uses Google Maps. So does most of your car navigation use Google Maps, but you can bring in other API services such as Mapbox and build your own sort of custom mapping solution. We can do anything around mapping. Love mapping, and I think mapping goes hand in hand or works really well with Bubble. So that's the visual elements, okay? Next down the list, we have your containers. So I'm just going to bring up a little containers page to show you what containers are. And if I preview containers, Bubble has a little debugger bar down at the bottom, which you use to help you diagnose issues, but I usually just remove it. And here are containers. So a container is a group. Within that container, I have some text, and I'm just styling these containers. They can have background colors, they can have shadows. Here is a repeating group of users. All right, so these guys, they're in, they can come from the database, or they can come from what's called an option set. We'll look at that later. But basically, I've designed once. Let me actually show you here. Here is a repeating group. A repeating group has a data source. I've just set up a temporary data source for this, but I've only designed it in one area. This is what I designed. This first card, I designed this stuff, and then I linked through the data. Parent group's test data is display, the role, email, the image. So I designed the first, and I pulled in all the data for the rest. Now your mind is exploding here, and you're thinking, wow, okay, I get it now. When I first learned about repeating groups, I then understood, I see, so TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all of these feeds, they're not individually designed. They're designed once, small piece of code, probably a few hundred lines of code, and that's it. That's all you do. You design the first one, and it repeats a million users. So you can search that data, filter it, set 2 different dates, whatever you like. Okay, that's the power of repeating groups. Bubble also has tables. So if you want to display your data like you would in an Excel spreadsheet, Bubble enables that for us as well. Here's a pop-up. I'm going to show a pop-up. Cool, great. You can run workflows in this pop-up. You can show data. You can push data into it and edit data or delete data. Build alerts. Do anything you like. Here's a floating group on the left-hand side. Let me just refresh this page because Bubble thinks I made some changes, so I had to refresh the page. Floating group, left-hand side, we recognize this is just like a dashboard. We are going to be building a dashboard in a bit, okay? A group focus. So this is, if I click on, this is like a drop-down. So if I click on this image, here we have a menu, and we can run a button from within this. So these are containers. Containers are a way, and all of these containers, they differ slightly in terms of how they display data, but a container basically is a way to group visual elements together. All right, and containers can be within containers, nested containers, and they can each have their own display flexbox controls as well. And here is a table. So this is a repeating group, great for like card design. Here's a table, well, great for kind of a table view, whatever you like. And yes, guys, this is all responsive down to phone sizes. And I have a course called Buildcamp, which is the leading course in the Bubble ecosystem for adapting your designs for mobile. So that's containers. What's next in the list? If we scroll down, we have input forms, one of my favorite. So let's go to input forms. Notice I'm changing the page, and I'm going to preview the page. I'm just going to remove the debugger bar again. All right, yeah, so I'm interacting with this input, okay? Email address, so developer@buildcamp.io. And then I can use this however I like, you know? And I can collect text, integers, you can drop in addresses here, all types of data that you can with code, you can do with Bubble, no difference. Multi-line input for paragraph text, all right, for paragraph text. And it will grow as I type. Or I can choose it not to grow. We will just scroll bar on the right-hand side. Radio buttons, check boxes, drop downs, all right, search boxes. So if I type a search, I don't have data to search at the moment, but if I did, I could type Greg, and I could say, show me all user accounts where the first name is Greg. Or I could search for listings. I could say, show me all listings in San Francisco within a 2-mile radius of where I am right now. Slider inputs, you know, what's the age range? What's the shoe size? What's the pay grade? Show me products within a particular price range, or listings within a particular price range with this particular slider input, which has 2 bars, min-max values. And we can take these min-max values from a workflow, and we can save them to the database. Or we can, in real time, filter what's on the page. Date and time pickers. You can style this stuff, guys. This is just default out the box. Picture uploaders. File uploaders. You can upload PDFs, have users save PDFs. And by the way, this data is saved. You might have a question like, which service does Bubble use for the database? They use Amazon Web Services, Ironclad. Banking services use Amazon, super secure with their encryption. All right, so when you save a PDF that is, needs good security, it will have good security. You are the one in charge of setting up that security. Bubble provides the means and controls for us to do that to a granular degree, where maybe you are a company owner and you have all of these documents, but you can mark which documents you want to be visible to which user based on permissions. You build all the stuff out, okay? You build all this out. So we've talked about our visual elements, we've talked about containers, and we've talked about our input forms or our inputs. Now, when you combine all of these things together, we get components, which forms the basis of our UI, our user interaction, our interfaces. So let's have a look at building a sign-up form, which is a collection of all of these 3 things. So here we have a sign-up form for a pretend company called Collab. This is straight out of Beginner's Camp. Okay, and we have a group grouping these elements together. That group has a layout of column. And guys, we are going to be building this from scratch in a second, but I'm just running you through how the various elements are coupled together basically. We have a title, which is Collab text element, a subtitle text element, and then we have our little input labels, email and password, as well as our inputs. Then we have a button at the bottom, and we're going to use this button to sign someone up. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, guys, and create a new page. I'm going to call this sign up. And I'm not going to clone it, but we could, in fact, have a page that we clone if we wanted to inherit some settings from that page, but it makes a direct clone, okay? In this instance, I just want a clean white page, and I'm going to run you through how to create this sign-up form from a blank slate. So I'm going to go ahead and create that. And I'm going to bring up my property editor, all right? Property editor. And at the top, we can see it's called sign up. And I'm going to call this sign up, and maybe we can say it's about Buildcamp. Okay, so on the layout tab, I'm going to choose column. You'd usually always choose column unless you're on like a split screen kind of layout with 2 columns. Usually a page layout runs top to bottom from the nav bar at the top to the footer at the bottom, and it's a single column with lots of sections. In this instance, we're just building, it's going to be a sign up group just in the center of the page. The default builder width, not the page width, but the builder width is 1440. Actually, I'm going to choose 1400. This is just a bootstrap size from a design system that I've created, and I think 1400 works quite well. This doesn't mean that it's a static design, it's fluid, it will be responsive down to a mobile phone, and it will be as wide as you need, but it would always have a max width because, you know, big screens, you don't want your content spread all the way across. Okay, good stuff. So let's have a look. I'm going to just put this container alignment in the center. All right, this means whatever object I drop inside here will be dead center. First of all, I'm going to grab a group, and I'm just going to sort of draw in a shape like this, okay? Let's put it on the left-hand side, so I'm going to move it to the center of the page. There it is there. I'm going to call this group container. This is the outermost group. I'm going to, I've set up some styles here, so I'm going to give this a style card medium. And if we look at what this means, on the group, it means that I have a background color of flat color, 16 on the roundness, 200 neutral for the border color. And on the layout, I have padding of 32 pixels all the way around, okay? So if I click away, you can actually see the border. Now I have got some settings. I have some view settings which says show element borders. So if I turn that off, you basically see what we've dropped on the page, this group here. Now we have to jump into the group and decide, well, what is the layout and what is the distribution of content within the group? If I start dropping in the logo, some text, some inputs, is it going to be widthways or top to bottom? And we want top to bottom. So I'm going to set that as a column, top to bottom. Okay, put that back in the center. Now, it's not going to be fixed width, of course, because web pages aren't fixed width. They're always fluid. So we'd set a max width because I didn't want this group to grow too wide. It'll look silly if our inputs are super long. So I'm going to set a max width of 480, but no min width, which means it can just squeeze down to fit into a phone as well. So I'm going to uncheck the box for fixed width. I'm going to set a max width of 480, remove the min width, and the min height. It doesn't really matter for now. I'm just going to make this a square. And the min, what happens is, I will design what I need within this group, and then the height will adjust if it needs more space. And if there is some vertical height left over, well, then I can make the box hug the elements. And I'll show you what that means after I finish building this. Okay, so we need that logo. All right, so I'm just going to jump into my data. I'm going to go across to File Manager because I have this logo here. It's called Origin. And I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to go back into the design tab. I'm going to grab an image and I'm going to drop it in. Now, of course, I could just upload an image, but I'm not too sure where it is. So I'm just going to paste this in, and there it is there. Now it's too tall, guys. So on the layout tab, I'm going to choose a width of 48 pixels, part of my design system, part of Bootstrap standards for element sizes. Keep aspect ratio fixed. I want it 1:1. It's a perfect circle basically. And I'm going to align it horizontal in the center. Okay, so that's the first thing I'm going to do, and then I'm just going to call this image logo. Next, I want the name of basically my company. So we can pretend like the name is Collab. So I'm going to type in Collab. Collab stands for collaboration. It's part of a course I teach. Now I'm going to give this a heading style of 4, just personal preference. I'm going to put that in the center as well in terms of the image element. Now, if I let this image element span all the way to the edge by removing any kind of max or fixed widths, then this naturally, the text naturally would be in the center. So I'm going to head over to the layout tab. I'm going to uncheck fixed width and boom, in the center. Obviously, we have a vertical spacing issue. This is touching this. So back on the group container, the first element we put on the page, I'm going to choose a gap spacing of 24. And gap spacing basically means that anytime we put an element in this group container, it will always have 24 pixels of spacing. And if we want to change that, well then the elements that we want to reduce the spacing between, which we'll get onto, we then have to group those in a new container and then apply gap spacing within those. So it's a bit like padding or margin, but gap applies to the entire container, not just one instance. So it saves us a lot of time. I'm going to grab some more text because I want a subtitle. I'm going to say ready to jump in, question mark, sign up below. And this is subtitle text, so I'm going to choose a body dark medium. I'm going to choose alignment in the center, and I'm going to choose a slightly lighter color because color and hierarchy play together. And again, the text element is too short, so I'm going to let it span edge to edge by unchecking on the layout tab, fix width and removing the min width and removing the height as well. So you can see that the text element is taller than it needs to be because the text is not as tall. So if I remove the min height and have fit height to content checked, then basically it fits to the content within. All right, and let me just show you what happens. So if I take it onto a new line, you can see the text element will grow as it needs to. All right, that's Flexbox kicking in. Now, when I talked about your gap spacing being 24, I'm going to show you how to then reduce it between the two text elements, because like elements are together. Okay, text needs to be closer together, but further away from the logo. When it gets down to the inputs, they need to be closer together, but further away from the header text. So I'm going to just simply highlight this text here, collab. I'm going to highlight beneath that, ready to jump in, and I'm going to group that in a new container. So now we're talking about nested containers, and this is how you build. It's just nesting containers and adapting the layouts of those containers. That's it. So now I can head over to the layout tab, check apply gap spacing, and then choose 12, which is half of 24. Okay, this is going to be called group header. And as I'm building on the left-hand side, I can uncheck only show hideable, and I can see the hierarchy of the group container, image logo, and then we've got the group header. And if I expand group header, now we've got text collab and the subtitle text. Perfect. Let's continue. Now we need the inputs with the labels. So let me create the label first. I'm going to drop in some more text, and I'm going to say email. Actually, the casing, let me say this, email like this, and then I'm just going to change the style to body small. And obviously you can see the text element again, too large, so we need to adapt it so that it just sits nicely next to the text. So I'm just going to quickly just get through that like so. Okay, time for our input, folks, because we need to capture an email address. So when you sign up to Bubble, by minimum, you need two things. You need an email address and a password. Yes, there are other authentication options, such as Magic Link. When you put in your email address and click a button beneath it that says send verification link, you go to your Gmail or your email provider, you click a link, and that actually logs you in. So some people are moving to that because it means you don't have to remember your password, your customers to your site. And also you can log in with social, with Gmail, Twitter, that kind of thing. Social logins also fairly popular. But anyway, let's type in the placeholder here into your email. And I'm going to change the content format to email just in case someone doesn't type in an email there. This doesn't verify whether the email exists, and there are ways and means that we can do that. It just makes sure that someone does type in an email and not their first name by mistake. This stuff happens. This is called form validation. And because we learn it to be professional developers, we need to take note of all of these things. We always need to help the user as much as possible. Okay, on the layout tab, I'm going to let this span edge to edge. And I'm going to set 48 pixels tall, which it already is. Okay, these need to be closer together, the label, email, and the input. So I'm going to right-click group elements in a column container. And then for this, I'm going to choose 8 row gap, a bit smaller. Now we have a new group, so we need to label this properly. That's group email. And then guys, what I love about Bubble, and to save time, and actually it's a good method, is just copy and paste components that you've created already. So you could call this a component because there's 2 elements together. I'm just going to go copy paste, and now we have our group email copy, which I'm going to change to group password. Email, I'm going to change to password. And then enter your email, I'm going to say enter your password. Okay, we could also do something like this. I could also just add some dots here or maybe just keep it as dots, all right? But then I will just change the title here, password, because we're going to need that soon. And then the content format is password. So this is a great use case for content format is when they type their password in, you know, it'll be the dots. They won't be able to see what they're typing. Okay, but I do want, at the moment, the gap spacing is separating all of these groups down the page. I do want group password and group email together closer. So I'm going to say group in a column. We're continuing to nest here, guys, and this time it will be 12. Perfect. Then this new group will be group inputs. So if we have a look on the left-hand side, we can see that we've got our group container, group header, and then our group inputs, and within group inputs, group email and group password. And now all we need is a button, folks. So I'm going to drop in a button first of all. I'm going to say sign up. And I'm going to change the style, which I've set up already, to primary large, and quite simply span it edge to edge by removing the fixed width, removing the min width, and also making sure that the min height is consistent between my inputs and my button. So 48 pixels, Bootstrap standard. I teach Bootstrap across all my courses. Fantastic. Now, guys, how do we make this bad boy work? All right, so let's look at that. So let's edit the workflow. So what we'll do very simply, Bubble gives us all of these options: navigation, payments, analytics, plugins. We're just going to choose account, and the first one, sign someone up. You need users in your application for it to be an application. And now this is just a matchmaking process, okay? So Bubble's asking for an email address, so we feed it the email address from the inputs value. So if I just type in email, because I named my inputs, so input, enter your email's value, okay, it's always going to be the value. Now I can type password and then point to the input password value. We're going to feed that stuff through the workflow and then into the database, and they're going to be signed up and logged in on that button click. And then we have some other options here, such as require password confirmation, which would be a second password input box. Don't feel like we need that in this day and age. We want to keep it as small as possible. And then we can also send an email to confirm an email. Bubble, that's just a built-in workflow by Bubble. You can choose to do that if you like, to confirm that the email address is ready. But I actually build my own pin-related one, which I feel is more familiar UX, all right? Send them a pin randomly generated, then they have to put the pin in. And if it's incorrect, then I disable their account on 3 tries. And then we can add more fields here. So maybe you wanted to collect their first name or their logo or their store name. You can do that as well within the same form. I prefer to break forms down or the sign-up process into multiple parts, multi-step form, if I'm asking for a lot of information at the very beginning, which is, you can put some people off. So we'll keep this simple. So we're just going to go with that, and then we have to think logically, well, what comes after clicking that button, because they don't know that they've been signed up. Well, something needs to change. So why don't we just point them to the test page, and let's have a look at that. So navigate, go to page, test, and we can pretend that that's our dashboard that they'll be signed up and logged in to then start using. Okay. So let's just put in some dummy details here. We're on version test, so it doesn't matter. email@email.com. Form validation kicking in here. Perfect. And let's sign them up. Okay, so here we are, guys. Let's jump into the data and let's have a look. Here is a row in the database. Here is a user. They have an email address, and this is their created date and time, and they have a unique ID as well, which we will always use. The unique ID is basically make sure that every single row in your database is unique, okay? Because sometimes if it's like product data, it might not be unique. There might be multiple stores with the same name or multiple products called sneakers, Nike sneakers. So unique ID is very important. All right, guys. So that is the sign-up process, and the build process for something like a sign-up form. I mean, that was super, super quick, less than 10 minutes. That's how fast you can get started as well. Okay, and now we're going to go to the dashboard page. So if I grab text, guys, and drop it in here, and look, it's going to be at the bottom here. Check this out. I can add dynamic data. I can say current user, which is me. I'm holding the mouse. I'm the current user. Let me just delete this quickly. I can say current user's email. check this out. If I refresh the page, look at this. I'm logged in and I'm looking at my data, email@email.com. So it's through this property editor that we define what data to pull out and show from the database. Okay, so database data comes through this add dynamic data in terms of displaying dynamic data within elements. But there are many other ways to display dynamic data, such as repeating groups, tables, even through just an image element. Should that image be static, which we did, this is the static element here, the Buildcamp logo, or should it be dynamic? Should it be dynamic? I'm going to quickly cheat in the data. I'm going to open up this pencil tab and I'm just going to upload a user's avatar from a developer standpoint. Your users will never see this part of the app, okay? This is obviously the Bubble editor. So I'm uploading an image. There's an image here. I'm also going to cheat here because I'm testing. I'm going to say Daniel Williams. Now I'm going to save this. And Bubble now updates the database with what you've just put into these inputs. And now we can display more stuff. So now I can grab an image, drop it in. It's obviously massive. So the first thing I'm going to do is set an aspect ratio and just 32 by 32. I'm going to group these two guys together, this image. And the reason why it's in the middle is because I've set a column layout here in a particular style, space between. But I'm going to get this image to sit next to this email down at the bottom, highlighting both of them, group elements in a row container. And now they're down here. While I'm down here, I'm just going to create some space between this text and this image element, which is 12 pixels on the column. And on this, I'm just going to responsively fix this text input, this text element. There we go, put that in the center. All right, so now I'm going to show you that we can pull this data by Daniel. Daniel is logged in. Here's his email address. And by the way, yes, we can actually change Daniel's email. So I can say that. Daniel.Williams. I'm just going to say Daniel for now. Obviously, we want to be building the tools to be able to do this within like an admin dashboard or for users to do this themselves, okay? But now I can click / and I can say current users, avatar, and run mode rendering. I'm going to change to zoom so it cuts the shape that I want down here, because I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to set the roundness to 32 as well for a perfect circle. So if I refresh, here's Daniel's image, here's Daniel's email address. Okay, so you can see that we built some UI. That UI comprised of containers to hold everything together and allows us to set the layout. It had an image, it had text, and it had input, and it had a button. We collected data through the inputs and the workflow. That workflow saved the data and created the user account in the database. And now we have created a dashboard. We've dropped some elements on the page, and we've instructed Bubble to go fetch the current user's data, such as their image and their email address. Okay, so that is the create and read part of CRUD. Create, read, update, delete. That's what an application is. So we can create data, save it to the database, and we can pull it out of the database as well, and we can display it for Daniel to see. Now, can Daniel edit this data? Yes, he can. Can he delete himself and delete his online store or whatever it is that we're going to be building? Yes, he can do that as well. The Bubble creates a delete function as well. And we can create multiple things at once. We can delete multiple things at once. We can edit multiple things at once. And we can run things such as backend workflows to do the server side and not in the browser. That's getting a bit more technical, far too technical for this particular course. But we can do all sorts of stuff here. We can save data from external services. Find an API service that shows the weather. Well, we can download the weather for the upcoming 10 days, put it into our database and display it to a user through a repeating group. Build your own weather app. Or you can not even touch the database and just pull it in from the API and just display it directly. Create like a direct link to this external service. Amazing stuff. Let's actually go back into the design because you've seen me sort of lay things out a little bit. There was a row, there was a column. Let's take this a bit further. So if I go to, I've got layout here, layout, and I'm just going to change this to layout. Now I've created a container, this gray box, and I've created a container on the left, a container on the right. Now in real life, these containers would be transparent or white or gray or black. Okay, I'm just giving them colors so you can see individual containers. Let's have a look at over here, just to prove that it's a container. This is group A, that's group B, and I can put text inside group A. There it is there, and I can change the text to white and so forth. So just so you know that these are containers, I just want to show you how layout works. So I can say on the parent group container, because these are now nested, I can go to the layout tab. Currently it is a row. A row means distribute data on the x-axis. Column means distribute data on the y-axis, top to bottom. So if you think of it in the context of a page would always be top to bottom. Nav bar, hero section, and then you have your content sections and your footer at the bottom. That is top to bottom. But within these sections, such as this gray piece is a section, a lot of your data is distributed left to right, and then it grows on a desktop left to right. You have sort of columns. Then within the columns, you can distribute data again. Do you want to distribute it top to bottom or left to right? And this is how we build layouts, just by using columns and rows. There are other times where we would use fixed and align to parent under container layout. Here they are here, but it's pretty rare, okay? Rows and columns form 99% of how websites are built. But I can just instruct a different layout here. So it's a row distributed left to right. I can go top to bottom. If I change this simply, if I change this from a row to column, column to row. And guys, this is essentially how you build interfaces. You set the layout first with your containers, and then you put your elements inside these containers, okay? So now, if I started with this design, a row left and right, then I would change it to a transparent background. Here's group A again. Okay, there's group B. And now in group A, I can now set where we had a row with group A and group B. Now in group A, I've set a column. Here it is a column. I can change it to a row if I wanted. It wouldn't look very good. And there's some constraints screwing up the design there. But just to show you that that's what we are doing, just distributing left to right or top to bottom and just nesting containers. All right, and there basically that's an image, a group with an image as a background. If we think of it in context of a nav bar, well, nav bars usually have a logo on the left, usually links in the middle, okay? Home, about, pricing, FAQ, buttons on the right. 3-column layout, that's the common thing with a nav bar. Here we are here. Here's the nav bar. And if we scroll down, we can see image on the left, links in the middle, buttons on the right-hand side. So the layout would be a row, okay? The layout would be a row. And then within rows and within columns, we have container alignments for how we want to distribute the content within the row. Do we want all the content within the row aligned to the left, aligned to the center, aligned to the right? Do we want it pushed to the edges and the center? Do we want the space between the elements the same? This is how granular we can get with rows and columns. Can really, and then we also have padding and margin to push things further apart and create space around things. Super cool stuff. So that's the layout. If I go to the spacing side, now this is kind of a concept that falls outside of Bubble. You don't need to know it, but understanding design systems will get you very, very far as a developer. And that's how you create beautiful interfaces. Now, systems exist everywhere, guys, design systems or just systems. What if a car manufacturer didn't have a system? What if Tesla just said to its workers, you guys decide on the wheel size. Let's start with a wheel size of with 750 centimeters. And then the first guy thinks, great, so the wheel size is 750. And then it gets to the next part of the factory where the guy said, where the guy couldn't remember what the wheel size was. And he said, was it 750 or was it 850? All right, I'm going to make this component and it's going to be 850. Then he tells the next guy that it's 850, and then that guy starts working with 850. You can see where the disparity and the chaos starts to ensue. Design systems ensure consistency with your procedures, okay? And that means that you need a design system later on after you've learned Bubble to be able to create consistent designs for your app. Button sizes is a classic, or button colors is a classic. Someone finds a color with a color picker and that's the button on this page. They don't create a style because they're eager to build. They go to the next page, drop in a button, and they think, what was the color? Oh, I think it was this. But then it's slightly off. And they still don't create a style. And then they go to the next page, drop them in a button. What is the size? Was it 44, 48? I'm too busy. I'm going to keep it 44. Once you've deployed the app, your user is looking around and they can pick up these subtle differences. And these subtle differences become huge differences as you begin building out your app. And this is why I designed FlexCamp, to say, guys, you need a system. This is why when I teach SaaS Camp, we create design systems from the very beginning, okay? So what I tend to do is just create my own spacing system, sizing system, and this is what it is. This is called the 4-point system that pretty much all developers use. Moreover, it's more of the 8-point system these days, but you can see these numbers. These are the numbers you use in terms of layout, spacing, padding, margin, button sizes, even text sizes. And in terms of radius, which is the curved sides, I tend to use 8, 12, 16, 24, and that's basically it. And then working within these constraints is far more simpler. Easier numbers to remember, but hopefully you have a styling system where you don't even have to remember these numbers. But you wouldn't have radius 8 on this box, and then you continue designing a bigger box or container, and then you use, say, 14 or 13 or kind of an odd number. You'd always define a particular system, and it's much easier to work and more consistent looking and more coherent, all right? The next concept I want to do before we get back to building in our dashboard is temporary data. Okay, it's 2 more concepts, and then we're just going to build for the rest of this course. And temporary data is a way to interact with data on the page, with data that doesn't exist in the database. Earlier on, I talked about we're creating an Airbnb experience where someone searches for listings in London, available listings between 2 dates. Then they click on a search button and then they get taken to a next page where there is a map and listings. We don't only save that to the database. That's called temporary data. In fact, that's called a parameter, which we're going to look at. And temporary data is a way to enable that functionality. They have started a search. We're taking them to the next page to show them the results. That's temporary data. There are 2 types of temporary data. One is called states. One is called parameters. Let me show you the difference. So the way a state works, and this is something you create yourself, okay? You can create a state for functionality such as toggles. I've clicked on yes, it's turned blue. I've clicked on no, it's turned black. I created a workflow for that to run. So if I click on yes, I'm setting a state, and then I'm saying to this yes button or no button that if the state exists, conditionally change the color. Okay, don't worry if you don't get it straight away. We're going to be actually building this in the dashboard, or I'm going to show you practical examples of this. Another good use case for states is a state list here where I can click checkboxes. Now, when you click checkboxes on other sites, there's no data being saved. It's just feedback. The data is saved on a button click somewhere else. So you might have a form. That form might have toggles, yes, no's, checkboxes, radio buttons, inputs, drop downs, multi-line inputs. A form might have all of this data together in one container with a button that says save at the bottom. That's where you can collect data from a state, from a parameter, from an input, from any kind of data source you like. You collect it later on. But you have to enable this feedback for the user. If they click on a yes toggle, something has to change to show that they've clicked on it. That's a good use case for a state. Okay. Now, in terms of a parameter, what I've done is I have get location from page URL. Okay, so I have instructed the map to look for the location, to look for a location in the URL in a parameter. Parameter is a key value pair. You set the key. I've called it location. I could call it cupcakes if I like. It doesn't matter. The main thing is linking a data source, which is a parameter, with an element on the page. That's the main thing here. So I've already gone and set the data source marker address to a parameter. That parameter is called location. So if I do this, anytime you see a question mark, okay, anytime you see a question mark, that means a parameter. And if you do a search, if you search for a flight on whatever sort of page you want, any kind of flight service, you'll see a bunch of question mark, something equals something, something equals something. If you search on Airbnb, listing equals, start date equals, price range equals. Those are parameters. That's temporary data. That's a way to not have to save stuff to a database. Just give the user some results on the page. I'm going to do this right now. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to say location. All right. Equals, and let's just pick, pick Sydney, just randomly. Now watch the map. Boom. Now we're in Sydney. That's how parameter works. Now parameters, I could have location equals Sydney and start date equals July 17th, 2024 and end date equals July 24th, 2024. And then I could point my calendars to that parameter. Temporary data. And I could save that search with the save button at the bottom, so I can come back and search for that again later. I could save that search to the user record. So I'm at the moment looking for a new house with a company called Rightmove in the UK. And I have saved my particular, the attributes I'm looking for in the next house, which is, it's got to be a certain number of rooms. It needs to be slightly rural. I want a bit of land, potentially outbuildings. I want off-street parking. So I have all of these saved to my user account. But when it came time, when I was trying to figure out the search, I had location. I had a search box. I then had a price range with slider inputs. I then had number of rooms with the drop down. I then had checked a box that says allow pets because my two dogs, Frank and Joey, you know, that's something that I need to be able to take them to for the next property. I selected a checkbox that said off-street parking. I selected a particular distance from where I live right now. And that's all saved. And I saved that with a single button click. Okay, so the temporary data gave me the feedback that I was clicking on stuff, writing in input boxes, and then the button clicks saved that to the database so that next time I can come and that's saved to my user record and it can just show me the results straight away. So that's temporary data. Now, you don't have to use temporary data for this map. Of course, I could be pulling this map from something saved in the database. Bubble's fairly agnostic with where it gets its data from. It could get data from an external source such as an API. It could get data from your own API connector. It could get data from your internal database on Amazon Web Services, the built-in database. Could get data from a state. It could get data from a parameter. I can save a state location. And we're going to be doing, I'm going to show you how to create states and parameters very shortly when we move into the dashboard, which is the building part. So that's temporary data, guys. You see temporary data anytime you interact with something on a web page and it gives you feedback, such as changes shape, color, something changes, that's a parameter, okay, or a state. Sorry, that's that's a state. But parameter is obviously the temporary data which you can then use. Difference between when would you use parameters and when would you use states? When you refresh the page, states are reset. Let me just demonstrate. So I'm going to click on yes and check these three boxes. Notice Sydney down here. If I refresh the page, the states have been reset. Now it's no without checkboxes, but we're still at Sydney. So parameters persist, meaning that they don't care about page refreshes because the data exists in the URL. Unless I change the URL, the data will continue to exist on a page refresh. So that's one of the main differences. But there are sort of use cases. You can't pass states between pages. You can pass parameters between pages. So I'd use parameters to collect data and then send it to another page. Other than that, I'd probably use states, to be honest. And states, you can hold temporary data as states. You can create rows of data and not save them to the database, but save them to a list, an invisible list in the page, and then on a single button click, save all the data you need to save to the database, including that list that you created. Okay, so that's temporary data. Now guys, the last thing I want to cover in terms of concepts is breakpoints, okay? And breakpoints we can see in the responsive design tab. 1200 is a breakpoint, 992, 768, 320. But you create your own breakpoints. And Bubble is building out a way to handle breakpoints a bit better. But just for your information, this is the breakpoint system I use. And this, what do breakpoints do? At a certain page width, you can instruct text to change sizes, inputs to change sizes, padding to change to more minimal or larger padding, change the direction from a row to a column. Breakpoints simply are a way to consistently change the design and adapt it to various screen sizes. That's all that breakpoints do, but we won't cover it too much. Again, I have a course called Flexcamp that covers this to a professional standard. And before we get into building out this dashboard, I wanted to show you one other thing in the data tab, or two other things. We have our data types. These are basically our tables. So we'd have like a user table. If we have products, we'd have a product table. Whenever you have a product, obviously needs a title, price, it needs all sorts of fields. Whenever you have a collection of fields, you would create a data type for it. So user data type, product data type, listing data type. Your two-sided marketplace, you create transactions between users. You would save that to a transaction data type and decide what kind of fields make up of this transaction. You would have your homeowner, you would have your visitor, you'd have your dates for this transaction. Maybe it's called a booking, doesn't matter. Point being, you'll have all of these various tables that collect data that belongs to the user or the product or the store or the listing or the booking. And at Buildcamp, I have lots of different data types. I have user data type. I have courses data types. I have data types for lessons that are attached to sections that are attached to courses. Because what is a course? A course is a list of sections. Section 1. What is in a section? A list of lessons. So I have a list of lessons in a section, and I have a list of sections attached to a course. And then courses have, a course has a title, has a price, number of students, number of sections. So you'll become comfortable with having all these separate data types that all sort of work together and cross-reference each other. And it's actually quite basic once you understand how this sort of structure works. We have a privacy tab, and Bubble creates the first privacy for you. And privacy is a way to secure data on the server. So you would never have, if you don't set a privacy rule on a user data type, that means all data on your server will be accessible by someone that understands developer tools in the browser. Anyone with sort of basic development experience will be able to access your data. Any data that's downloaded to the browser, that is, okay? So privacy rules are very, very important. It's something I cover in the beginners camp course. I'll cover it in all of the courses, but that's the beginners camp course gives you a good overview of how to secure your data and how to set up your rules so that if you're working together, so that you can see your own data and your colleagues' data if you're working in a team, but other teams don't know that your teams exist because maybe we're building Salesforce or Pipedrive or some kind of productivity app or Notion. Right, so I use Notion. I don't know who else uses Notion. They've got privacy rules in place so that only I can see my data and my team can see my data. So you can get really granular with data access through privacy rules, okay? So privacy rules is server-side security for your app. And it's something that you'll have to understand and set up before you deploy your app. Then you've got your app data, and this is basically our view into the database with our various fields. Then you have option sets. Option sets are great. Option sets don't exist in the database. They exist in a user's browser. It's for publicly accessible information. I use a good example of an option set is they are static lists. You can update them, edit them, but think of option sets as static, such as a list of countries. That isn't going to change. So if you want to ask someone which country they're from, you'd set up an option set. It would be called country. I would create that, and then I would start. America. I know this would be USA. I'm just sort of jumping ahead. I'd create that. I would create England. And then this list, I can then populate any elements or input form that takes a list of data, such as a drop-down takes a list of data. Repeating groups takes a list. Tables take a list. And we can also filter those lists. So that's what an option set is. And then you have your file manager. And this is anything you've uploaded or a user has uploaded. This is where you'll find them. So I uploaded this Daniel Buckley image. I can click on this PNG and there's Daniel's image. I can right click, save that if I want to. And then you can delete them if you want. Or you can search for them, or you can upload more data here if you want to be uploading in the back end. Okay. So guys, now we are going to get to this dashboard. And the purpose of building what I'm going to be building is to show you how the build process basically. So I've already set out like a scaffold for this. I'm going to actually call it dashboard. I'm going to change the name of this page here. So I'm going to bring up my inspector. This is the property editor, and I'm going to call this dashboard. This is how I change the name of pages. Just going to refresh this again. Okay, so I've already done some of the design here. So on the left, we have a floating group. What a floating group does is enables you to change the z-axis of a container, so something floats above the page. So when you scroll down many websites and the navigation bar remains stuck to the top, like sticky at the top, and all the content scrolls beneath, that's a floating group. And in this instance, I've set up a floating group on the left because this is going to be where we set up our menu. Okay. So what we're going to do is this. So I'm going to be able to demonstrate many things. And in the Beginner's Camp course, this is what the course is about. It's about building out a productivity app where users can create projects, where they can create tasks attached to projects, where users can work together as a team, where a team admin owner can manage their data, users, etc. And through the creation of a productivity app is I get to demonstrate basically almost absolutely everything that you can do in Bubble. Okay, but the most important thing that I'm going to demonstrate today is create, read, update, delete, as well as temporary data, design and layout, and the various elements around repeating groups, okay, and text elements and buttons and pop-ups. So let's get started. So I'm going to just show you a basic version. I'm going to show you what we're going to be building, something similar to this. This is actually the Beginner's Camp, but obviously that's, you can do that course at Buildcamp. We're just going to create a part of this. So with the Beginner's Camp, you would build your marketing page, you would build authentication, sign up, etc. But this is the one I actually want to build. So this dashboard layout is similar. Down the left-hand side, we have image, we have these buttons here. So if I click on this button, it shows what's on the right-hand side, okay? And there's one called projects, and that's what we're going to focus on. But in the Beginner's Bootcamp, you would be able to learn how to build all of this stuff. Here is a table with data, progress bars. But this is what we're going to be building. Okay, a way for a user to create a project and then display the project as a card. And through that process, we will be creating a project with this pop-up. And then in this pop-up, we would be able to save it, we'll be able to edit the data and delete the data. So that would be enough for you to get kind of an end-to-end experience of create, read, update, delete, and working within this kind of dashboard layout, okay? Won't cover the marketing pages. The landing page is far more simpler. There's no real interaction. It's just showing data. Okay, so I'm going to I am going to first grab some text. I'm going to drop it in here. I'm going to say projects. Okay. Layout tab, I'm going to remove the fixed width, and I'm just going to style this slightly. Actually, that's okay. Then I am going to right click and say group elements in a row container. Okay. Because if I just reference this Figma file, what we're trying to build is this. And this has 3 elements. So the container is the gray part, the part we click. So it's similar to a button, but with buttons, you can't put iconography into buttons with Bubble just yet. You can through a plugin, but I just want to demonstrate sort of the native abilities here. So I want an icon, I want text, and I want this little chip icon here, little right arrow caret icon. So that's why I put it in a container. And I'm going to call this container group project. And then when we click on group project, that's when we get to change the view with a parameter. I'm going to set the height of this to 44. Okay. And then I'm going to take projects. I'm going to put that in the center. Next, I'm going to grab a material icon. I'm just going to sort of draw it in, guys. So you can drop it in, but often it's too big. But I'm going to draw in a shape. That's all I'm going to do. And then I'm going to give it an icon. Now, I think it's called layers. There's actually an issue with material icon at the moment with this version of Bubble I'm using. So I'm just going to delete that, and I'm going to rather use an outline icon, which is hero icons. So here's an example of a plugin I'm using called Hero Icons. Someone has gone ahead and created a little package for Bubble, and I'm going to use it. Now I'm just looking for something that represents a project. Okay, and this could be anything. Sometimes those 4 squares look quite good. Let's just see what we have to work with here. Could be like a folder, but I want to follow convention to a degree if I can. What I'm trying to figure out is the naming convention that they would use. Table cells, no. Let's just choose, here we go, squares 2 times 2. So I've just copied that wording and I'm just going to paste it in here. And there we go. I'm going to give this color. I'm going through this quickly, guys. And I'm going to choose 24 pixels all the way around, Bootstrap standard. And then I'm also going to look for the arrow, the right arrow. But that sort of caret icon here, chevron. So some people call it carets, C-A-R-E-T. Some people call it chevrons. I prefer chevron. So I'm going to copy and paste this icon here, put it to the right-hand side. And I'm going to paste this in, say chevron, thank you very much. Now I'm going to take this group project and this guy at the top, this group B. I'm going to right-click, group elements in a column container. Why didn't that work? Group content. So what I'm doing is I'm just looking at the position group G. So this is the element tree, and I'm going to rename group G to just group content. And I'm going to go down and say reveal an elements tree, and Bubble then opens this up to show you the hierarchy and structure of elements within this floating group. So I've got a group B over here that's in group content, and then I've got a group E over here. So group E will be called group project. And I'm going to take group project and I'm going to drop it in group content. And then I'm just going to reorder group B at the top, down there, perfect. So group content at the top, row gap of 48, that's perfect. All right, so let's just get back to this clickable element here. So group project, that needs some gap spacing. I'm going to choose 12. And because we are on a row layout, we have, our icon on the left, project in the middle. and button on the right hand side. And you can see how this project text element, which is different to the text inside, the element is here is the container, put the text inside, and then decide on the behavior or the display. So if I say fit width to content, the text element is fitting width to the content within. And if I add letters here, you can see how it grows. But I'm just going to let it grow all the way across to fill up all of the space. And this is Flexbox kicking in here. So with Flexbox, I've said, look, I've got a container, I've got 3 elements. These left and right elements are fixed, basically 24 by 24. But this text, I have no max width, no fixed width, no fit width content. Therefore, it's allowed to grow within that container. That's what I want. Now, I also want a border here, basically. So I'm going to choose some padding, left-right padding of just 12 and 12, because I want us to change color using a parameter once it's been clicked. User feedback. Okay, now that we have that, guys, now that we have that, I'm going to run a workflow on this bad boy here. I'm going to add workflow, and I'm going to say navigate, go to page. This is just how we change parameters. I want a parameter that says v or view equals projects, because we're going to stack all different views on the right-hand side. If I go back to this Figma file, when I'm building in Bubble, this would be the page, and I would have the projects group over here, and then maybe underneath it I have the task group, but it's all collapsed. It's all hidden and collapsed, and that vertical height is removed. And we're going to be showing and hiding either the projects, tasks, here's another one, home view on the right-hand side, here's another one, members view. All of those are stacked when we build, but hidden and collapsed. And we use parameters to change the view. So if I click on members, I want to see the members view. If I click on home, I want to see the home view. So the destination basically is the same page, right? We're not actually going away from the pages, but it's within this action that I can say, send more parameters to a page. This is where I give it a key. I'm going to say V for view. It's just for my doing. No one cares what it's called. It could be called cupcake. It doesn't matter. And then I'm going to say projects. Okay, so let's just test this. I'm going to refresh the page. Here's projects. If I click on it, V equals projects, but no feedback to the user. So let's work on this parameter. On the design tab, let's do this. Let's go to the conditional tab, guys. This is something new now. So we've talked about temporary data. We've talked about the appearance, styling, color, form, shape, layout. Layout tab is over here. This third tab, conditional statement. And this allows us to make a change to something visually or to show and hide elements. Conditional. This is a good conditional. If current users admin is yes, allow them to see this admin related data. If current users role is viewer, but not editor, don't show this button. Hide the button. Hide the button that says create data. This is something I teach at Beginners Camp. We use conditionals on condition of me having a role viewer and not editor, either show and hide this button. In this instance, we're going to say on condition of the parameter V equals projects, then show the project view. Okay. The way we do this is we say when, and I'm going to say get for get data from page URL. And then we're going to say the parameter name is V. I decide what this should be. And then I'm going to say is under operators. I'm going to type with my keypad, projects, enter. Then let's change the color. Let's say, I'm just going to go to the appearance tab very quickly, and I'm going to set a background color that matches, what is the color here? Neutral 100. Okay. So I set up a style of flat color, neutral 100. I'm going to say now change the color, background color, from neutral 100 to neutral 200, which is slightly darker. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to give some border roundness here of 8. So if I refresh the page, because this conditional statement is true, V equals projects. Here it is again on conditional statement. get V is projects. If I refresh, watch what happens here. Boom. Now, if I change projects and I say home, watch what happens to projects. Not highlighted. So this is a basic understanding of parameters. Okay, basic understanding of parameters. I'm going to click on projects again. Now, the right-hand side. I've set up a group here already. Now I'm going to say that I'm going to say only show this group when get data from page URL, get V again is projects. If that's the case, don't change the color or anything, just this element is visible, yes. And don't show it by default. This element is visible in page load, no, and collapse when hidden. And what I'm teaching you here is something you'll be using all the time, okay? I'm not covering edge cases in this course. I'm covering a repeatable process that you'll be building with over and over and over. This is how you build a dashboard. Parameter for views. Parameter to change the condition of something, to give feedback to a user that something's been clicked. Okay, so I'm just going to drop in some text here. This text is going to say projects. I'm going to change this to maybe a heading 5. Perfect. Okay, so if I refresh the page now, I'm going to remove V equals projects. Let's refresh the page. Do you see how we can't see anything here? Nothing here. But here's this group. Let's call this group projects. Well, now we can't see it because on the layout tab, remember I said that on page load, this element is visible on page load. No, it's not. And collapse it when hidden. If we didn't check collapse when hidden, it would create this vertical space that would be problematic. So we'd always want to collapse space. But I've said on condition that get V is projects, then show it. So let's refresh the page, click on the projects button, and here's the group. So that is basic, well, that is how you build dashboard navigation, guys. You've learned it already. What is stopping you from starting a bubble journey? And if you want to get started, Beginner's Camp is where you start, okay? That is the leading beginner's course for getting into bubble. Okay, let's create some data here. Now, before we create data, we actually need to create a form, don't we? We need to create a form. So I'm going to create a button. I'm going to put this button over here. And this button will say create. Okay. And I'm going to set up a style attribute of primary large. I went ahead and did this before I started this course. And I want the button on the right-hand side. Okay, so I'm going to click on the create button. I'm going to click on projects, right-click, group elements in a row container. I'm going to call this group header. Now on the layout tab, I want the button on the right-hand side. We're currently within a row and the container alignment is left. So on this group header, the container that contains the create and the projects, and by the way, the projects, I'm going to make this a bit tighter, the project text elements. When we remove fixed width, it's a way to push the button to the right. I'm going to show you another way. Remove min width, remove min height, and check fit width to content. Okay, so if I go back to the group header, I can change the alignment here, guys. Look at that. But the one on the right-hand side called space between, this is where I can push the elements apart. Space between. Lovely stuff. On this create button, on the layout tab, I'm going to remove the fixed width because I want the button width to adapt to the text within. So I'm going to remove the fixed width. I'm going to remove min width, and I'm going to set fit width to content. So the button must fit width to the content within, which is create, and the button will grow if I add more text. Perfect. Now we need a pop-up. So let's do this. Let's hit the create button, show a pop-up, and then drop in the various elements we need to save data to the database. And then we'll talk about how do we display this project data, how do we edit it, how do we delete it. All right, so let's do this. Let's grab a pop-up, and I'm just going to click, and I'm going to just drop it on the page like that. Okay. Now I have a default style for this pop-up. Pop-up A, I'm going to call this pop-up project. Okay, and then I'm going to grab some text. I'm going to drop it in. Actually, the first thing I need to do is I'm going to go to the layout tab and yep, it's set to column. Wait, what am I on here? Sorry, in the pop-up. It's set it to column. I'm going to add gap spacing of 24. And with pop-ups, you do want a max width. You'll never want a fixed width because you want a mobile responsive. So I'm going to set it to 480. So Bootstrap standard, I'm going to remove the min width and the min height 320. I need something for now, so I'm just going to do that. Okay, this text is going to say project. And I'm going to give it a heading 6. I'm then going to remove fixed width, min height. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of a project now. So a project probably needs an image, just the way we're designing it. Let's have a look at Beginner's Camp and just see how I designed in Figma first, this card. Let's do this. Let's do this card here. This is Figma, by the way. It's probably the leading design tool. I tend to use Figma for designing the UI, the single source of truth. I don't just design in Bubble. This is because I come from an agency background where multiple people had to look at designs and then build stuff on different pages simultaneously. You don't have to use Figma, but it is something that I integrate into my courses because it's a professional tool and the Figma community is probably 100 times the size of Bubble. So there's many career choices in there. Anyway, we're going to do this. We're going to ask for an image just so we can render this card view, title, and description. That's all we're going to do, guys. We're not going to add users and all the rest because then this YouTube course will turn into a 10-hour course, and I've already created that at buildcamp.io. Okay. So we want to display images, right? So we need a picture uploader. I'm going to drop in that picture uploader. I'm going to remove the fixed width and I'm going to set it to about 200. And I've already set a style here. Click to upload an image. Then I'm going to grab an input. I'm going to drop it beneath. This will be called add a title. That will be text. And I'm going to check this box that says this input should not be empty. So I'm not going to allow a workflow to run unless I put in a title. Form validation, all right? Form validation, very important. On the layout tab, I'm going to let this stretch edge to edge. And then description, I'm going to add a multi-line input. So it's paragraph text, okay? Yes, you can constrain the amount of text someone can put in here, or you can just let it flow and then you can truncate the text for the card view, so all the cards are a similar height, and then show the full description in another way that you decide. Okay, the height, I'll usually make double the height of a standard input, which would be, what is this? So it'll be 96. Min height, 96. The minimum height should be 96. Then we need a way to save this. So I'm going to click button, I'm going to drop it in the input, and I'm simply just going to say save. And this is going to be a button large. Okay, I'm going to let this span just for my creative choice, edge to edge. You can make it smaller if you like. I like a nice big save button. All right, guys, so if I click on save now, so add a workflow, what am I saving here? I'm saving project data. Do we have a project data type? No, we don't. So at the moment, if I choose data things, create a new thing, and a new thing, if I could rephrase this, is a new row in the database, a new object, a new thing, a new row in the database. Always say that to yourself, otherwise you get confused. Create a new thing. Now it says, which data type are you creating? A row in which data type? At the moment, we only have users, and you cannot create users this way. Users have to sign up to the app. So we have to go ahead into the data types, and create a new data type called project. Not projects, just project, because let's think of this as a box. Okay, data types are boxes or tables. Let's just say they're boxes. If we open the box that says user, we look inside. What do we see? What belongs to a user? So back on the screen, we have avatar, first name, last name. So I'm looking in the box and I have a user. That user has an image, they have a name, they have an address, they have food preferences, they have teammates, they have products they've created. That's all fine. Like that's hanging off users. But in terms of the attributes of a user, that is email address and personal information. That's a user. What about project? Create. Got a box, got project on the side. Let's look inside the box. Let's open the box. What's inside? Project has an image, title, and it has a description, just as the start. Now, what the beautiful thing about Bubble is that you can continue to build out functionality. You can build the basic version first, and then you can add more fields later, or you can delete fields. So you don't need your complete database schema set up 100%. Don't worry about that. Start building, start stringing things together, and then come back and add more fields. That's what we're doing here. So I'm going to say image, creating a new field. Field name is image. Again, I can call this anything I like, but I want to keep it sort of logical so I know what it is, image. And then Bubble is saying, okay, Greg, what type of data is this? And this is consistent with all developers. All developers have to create these fields, key value pairs, and have to match them up. So the developer in me says, well, an image is kind of, it's an image. So I'm just going to scroll down. I'm going to go to basic types, and I'm going to find image. Boom, create. Look at this. This field is a list, multiple entries. I'm not going to click that. I'm just going to click create. Image is an image. Yes, we can create a list of images attached to a data type. A listing is a good example. A home listing, car listing, a product listing will come with multiple images. E-commerce, good example. Multiple images of a dress or a jacket. You can save multiple images here. You can build out the UI where a person clicks a button and then can upload or drag and drop images onto the page, and that just uploads to their particular product. Title. What is a title? Well, a title's text, isn't it? It's text. What about description? Description is text. That's all it is. But, we could have dates here. Date ranges. We can have Booleans, yes, no fields. We can have files. These are all the things I can add to this project form. I can add dates, start date. What is the end date? What is the project value? Range sliders. Anything under visual elements, I can put into a form. I can capture that data and save it to a row in the database. But this is text. That's what it is. Okay, this is text. So now we can save this. So now I'm back in the editor. I'm going to edit that workflow. Now I'm going to choose project, and Bubble has this neat little button down here that says add all fields. And this is what I've already set up. So let's start top to bottom. I'm going to click / and where is the description? So now we have a matchmaking process. We have a database field called description that's expecting text. Where am I getting that text from? And now we have to find an element that accepts text. We know what that element is. It's a multi-line input because we created it in the form. So I'm typing mul for multi-line input, A's value. Image. The database wants an image. So we need an image element to be able to input. We can't match this up, let's just say, with a random input. What's going to happen? Bubble is going to turn red here, and it's going to say, look, that's not an image. We need an image element here. Matchmaking process. So I'm going to go and find, I'm just going to delete this out here. I'm going to say / and picture uploader. Picture uploader's value. Lastly, title is very simple. Input add a title's value. Okay, guys. So we create the project, and when it comes to workflows, we need to logically think about what happens next, because we have to design this. Bubble's not going to just magically do everything for us. I think we're getting there though. They are working on an AI module, and I'll have to do another course when they create that. But soon we'll be able to instruct Bubble to build a lot of stuff for us. But we need to be able to walk before we can run. Okay, we need to understand how this stuff works logically together. So step one is create the project. Well, what happens next? When I click the save button, think about when you've created data in Notion or somewhere else with the save button. What happens? Well, if it's a pop-up, the pop-up's going to close. So I'm going to click next action. I'm going to go to element actions because the element is a pop-up. I'm going to say hide. Hide what? Bubble's asking. I'm going to say, please hide the pop-up project. Boom. Let's get professional here. So I've gone ahead and installed a plugin called, have I? Let's type in toast notifications. All right, so let's do this. So I've just very quickly installed a plugin that allows for toast notifications. And I am going to just drop this in here. 1 second, guys. You don't really need to know what I'm doing here. It's for another course. Next. So let's just go back to the save workflow. So we're going to save data to the database by creating the project. We're going to hide the pop-up and check this out. After we've hidden the pop-up, I want to give feedback to a user that something's being created. They might see it directly in a card what's being created, but it's also good to give more feedback. So I'm going to say success. Okay, and this is a little plugin that my friends have created that will show a toast icon. So you'll see what a toast icon is in a second. Let me just, and you've seen these before. Let me just quickly find it and just change one thing. So I'm going to top center. Okay, but let's just go back to this create button because we need to show the pop-up on a button click, all right? So we've created the pop-up and now I'm going to add a workflow on the button to first element actions, show this pop-up. So you can see that this is all logic based, and the beautiful thing, or the democratizing feature of Bubble, is that you guys understand workflows and logic already because you use computers every day. You know what happens when you click on pop-up save buttons. You know that by clicking a create button in the dashboard is going to probably show you a modal or a pop-up to create data. You know the stuff. So you can go ahead and you can create these workflows knowing very well how things should function, what the logic is, what the workflow is, right? So beautiful. We click the create button. We want Bubble to show the pop-up. Well, there we go. There's an action to show the pop-up. Let's do it. Create, I'm going to click on this guy. There's the pop-up. I'm going to go ahead and find an image. So the image I'm after is butterfly. Okay. I'm uploading that image. Don't worry about sort of the layout within this. That's for another course. So this is going to be called brand refresh. So we could pretend like we're an agency that does design work. The client is called Butterfly and we're creating a project. And then within this project, we're going to have associated tasks that people work on and update the statuses. And we have end dates, calendar pickers, collaborators, all the stuff we build in Beginner's Camp. And then I'm just going to go to Lorem Ipsum. Going to grab some Lorem. I'm going to say that this is the description. I'm going to grab all of this stuff, right? Maybe it's a big description. I'm going to paste this in here and I'm going to click save, success. All right, so if we go to the database, guys, I'm going to go to my app data. Here it is here. Projects, let's click on this pencil icon. Let's look at the data. Here's the description. I can edit this if I want to. Here's the image. I can see a bigger version of it if I want to. Here's the title. Who created it? Daniel created it. He created it at this date and time. Okay, so we have some data to play with. Now, how do we view the data? Now let's move on to the next section, which is displaying data dynamically. I'm going to use a repeating group for this. Remember, because we're going to have multiple projects, I'm not going to create, I don't know how many are going to be created. 1 million maybe, I don't know, So I'm going to grab a repeating group, drop it in. And let's just do some basic design work. So I'm going to let it stretch edge to edge. I'm going to remove the min width. The min height will remain for a second. Within it, it's going to be a column. And I want this layout here where it is 3 rows across, or maybe 4 rows, because I think this design is slightly narrower. But we decide on how it's displayed. So let's work at that. Let's say number of rows. I'm going to remove the number of rows because I don't know how many rows of data we have. So I'm going to let it go infinite. The database decides how many rows should appear. But columns, I want a particular design. So I'm going to say columns 4. Columns 4. Okay. All right, so don't worry about the detail, guys. We're looking at the overview here. So I've just clicked on repeating group and I'm going to click on group projects. I'm just going to add some gap spacing here of 48. Let's push this down. Okay. So in terms of a repeating group needs data. So all we're doing now is we're linking to the database. The first thing Bubble needs to know is what type of data or what type of table is it. It's the project. So I'm going to say type of content, and I've got some options here. These are the ones I'd be using usually in a repeating group. Data types, user or project. I'm going to say project. Very well. Which projects? Now, if we're building out Beginner's Camp, the big course, we would want to see projects that belong to a team that Daniel works within. Okay, that's too complicated for this, not too complicated. You can learn it very quickly. But just for the sake of this course, I'm just going to say go find, do a search for projects without any constraints. What we could say as a constraint is where the created by equals current user. So this would basically be a server-side constraint or filter, which is instructing Bubble to just go fetch the project that the person holding the mouse created, which is Daniel. So you can see how powerful this can become, because it doesn't have to be current user. It could be current user's team. Okay. In this instance, I can leave it at that because Daniel is creating the projects. That's fine. Then we can sort the way that the projects are viewed on the page. Is it the most recent? Maybe we have a drop down, which is sort A to Z, sort most recent, oldest. We can choose a drop down to then link. The drop down can link to the sort. But I'm just going to say create a date, descending, no. And then close. So I'm just searching for all projects. Right, let's create this design for the card. So when it comes to repeating groups, we just design in the first cell. So I'm going to get this card in the first cell, and then the next thing I'm going to do is say card medium. So some of the design work has been done for me. And then on the layout tab, I'm going to say it's going to be a column within it and just fill up all the available space. Okay, now on the repeating group, actually it'll be easier just to show you. So if I grab some text, I draw some text inside, and I want this to be the title, okay? I would add dynamic data, and it's asking for a parent groups thing. And that's because repeating groups have a data source, but get this, groups have a data source. Pop-ups can have a data source. A parameter is a data source, a state is a data source, an API is a data source. So we get very granular with where we get our data from. Now this is an easy one because a group is nested within a repeating group. So we need to feed project data into that group. So I'm going to click back on this group. I'm going to call this group card. And this is going to be project data that I'm trying to display. And I'm saying to the data source now, instead of grabbing data from the database, grab it from the cell, because the cell's been populated with the data source with the constraints I've set up already. So I can just say current cells project. All right. So I could have 1,000 projects all pushed into 1,000 different cells, push that particular cell data into the group. Good to go. So now I can say parent groups projects, and then I can pull anything I want here, title. There we go. Now I'm going to set up a body large for the title, and I'm just going to do some quick design work here, edge to edge, blah, blah, blah. And there we go. So if I now refresh, check this out, guys. Brand refresh. Boom. That's coming from the database. How cool is that? Let's continue with this design. I'm just going to, some of this stuff I'll just glaze over. It's not important. Just doing some basic design work here. Do I want separator? Yes, white and 24. Okay. Now I want an image in here as well, guys. So I'm going to draw in an image. I'm going to grab some dynamic data from this image. So last time I uploaded an image, right? Because it was static. Now I'm pulling it from the database. So it's the parent group's projects image. And I'm going to cut the shape by saying zoom into that shape, please. I'm going to go to the layout tab. I'm going to select edge to edge, and I'm going to choose a fixed ratio of 3:2 common photography size. Actually, maybe a 4:3 would be better here, 4:3. And then I'm going to make first. Within this group, I want this image to be first, so I'm going to make first. And then I'm going to add some gap spacing of 24. And then I'm going to take group project title, copy paste, and then this will be group project. I'm going to change this to the description. And the description text needs to be different, smaller, so I'm going to say body small. Okay. Now I want these texts to be closer together. Like elements, remember I described how like elements need to be closer together, inputs, and then the button would be further away or the image would be further away. So I'll put that in a column and I'll halve the space to 12. It's part of my design system process. Fit height content, okay. All right, guys. Let's now have a look. All right, so there is our dynamic data. Too much text here, so check this out. What I'm going to do is I want 2 rows of data, so I'm going to set a max height of 40. So now if I refresh, it's just showing me 2 rows of data here. All right, so this card, I'm going to change the design quickly, choose card small rather. And the next thing I'm going to do, guys, is that is one project. Let's see what the next one is. This holiday campaign here. So let's create another project. I'm going to say create. There it is uploading. This is a holiday campaign. And I'm going to grab some lorem ipsum. Just some random lorem ipsum here, just for developer processes. Save. Boom. There we go. There we go. Now we're cooking on gas. Now we're creating data. Okay, guys. Now you're probably wondering, okay, so we've done create. Just did it right now. We've done read. We're displaying it in a repeating group. How do we edit? Okay, we're going to cover this next. So editing, how do we edit? So first we need a way for a user to know that it's editable. Okay, because maybe if I click on one of these, then it changes the view and then it shows me tasks belonging to Betterfly. And if I show you my Figma file, that's what we do build in the beginner's camp, is you click on Betterfly and then that shows you a different view with the tasks associated. Those tasks have checkboxes where we can search the tasks within the Betterfly project. We can change the status, show me the complete statuses or the planning stage of the task. We can see their signees, the progress through here. Everything is editable here as well. So a user would change the progress from planning to in progress, from in progress to complete. Fully functional productivity app that we end up building. We're not going to go that far though. What we want to do is just change some of this data here. Okay. So let's grab, what I'm looking for is vert, right. So we need a way for someone to edit data. So I'm just going to change this to project title. This is a placeholder that just allows you to visualize data better. I'm going to go to an outline icon, drop that in there. And I'm just changing, I'm creating an icon, a clickable icon here. Just so a user knows that they can edit this. Group in a row, speeding through this, make last, and this is called edit. All right. All right, so anyway, so now we need a way, and I've started the workflow here just from this section here, just to save some time, but we need a way that when this icon is clicked, this icon here, you can see the hand, it changes from an arrow to a hand, so we know it's clickable. Nowhere else is clickable, just here, we know it's clickable. We need a way to first display, to show that same pop-up that we created a project. We need a way to now push this project into that pop-up, and then a way to edit the data as opposed to create the data. All right, so you don't need to create 3 different pop-ups, one for creating, one for editing, one for deleting. No. We use the dry method. Do not repeat yourself. We've already created the pop-up. I'm not going to recreate it. Instead, I'm going to adapt the design, adapt the functionality to be able to just edit stuff straight off the bat into that work I've already done, that pop-up. Okay, so let's do that. So that means we've got a bit more work to do here. So in group project, what we need to do is make sure that the pop-up has a data source. So I'm going to say type of content is a project, but I'm going to leave the data source empty because I'm pushing data into that through a workflow. All right, so that has a data source. And now we can add initial data. We can add initial data to our input. So we can pre-populate any element that takes input data. So inputs, multi-line inputs, picture uploaders, file uploaders, maps, we can have pre-data from the database. So let's do that. So I'm going to say that you're going to get the data from the parent group's project. It's image, okay? It's image. I'm just going to try something here as well. I'm going to process with image IX. Don't worry about this. This is just an API I'm using here. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to pre-populate with initial content. Now the pop-up was set to a project data type. Therefore, in relation to the pop-up, the input is a child element, and the input can now reference the parent group's project's title. Initial data. And initial data is overlooked if there is no initial data. So if we click on create project for the first time, there's no initial data. But if now we click that little icon to edit a project, well, we're pushing project data from the database into the pop-up, and we're displaying it as initial data in those inputs. I'm going to do the same here. So parent groups projects, description. All right, check this out. So if I just want to create data, create a project, well, I click on create, empty, nothing here. Okay. Sorry, we have to run that workflow. So what I'm going to do is that when these 3 buttons are clicked, I'm just going to change this to a green color so you can see what I'm doing. Then I'm going to choose something called element actions, display data. You could also say push data, same thing. Where do we want to display the data? In the pop-up project. Where is the data coming from? Well, it's just coming from the parent where I'm clicking. In that card, in the cell of the repeating group, that's the data. So it's a parent group's project. So can you see how we matching data? The repeating group has a data type called project. The pop-up has a data type called project. Therefore, we can push data between these 2 containers because they share a similar data source. Now my logical brain says, okay, if I click on those icons, the 3 dots, I'm displaying data into the pop-up. Is there something else I need to do? Yes. This is logic. Well, you also have to show the pop-up because I can display it into a pop-up, but we don't have to see the pop-up. So I'm going to say element actions show pop-up project. Boom. Let's try it. Brand refresh. Let's do this one first. Boom. Betterfly, brand refresh, data. It's going to refresh the page. Holiday campaign. Boom. Holiday campaign. How cool is that? Refresh the page. Or I can just create. Don't worry that I'm refreshing the page just because I haven't set the workflow basically refresh the data for me, but we can take the data out of that as well with a particular step. Okay, so this is where, let's step up a level now. Let's go to level 2. We've done level 1, got a good overview, we've building out stuff. I'm going to take you to level 2 now, okay? Level 2 is this, the save button. I don't want an edit button here, I just want save. Can have an edit button that we can show conditionally when data exists. Instead, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say, change this to green as well. I'm going to add conditionality to a workflow. Remember the condition I set here for this element. The condition was change the background color to neutral 200 when this is clicked. That's the condition. We can add conditions for workflows, and these conditions can be daisy chained. Mega powerful. Let's keep it simple. When do I want to create project data? Well, I want to create project data when there is nothing in this pop-up, when I haven't pushed data into this pop-up. That's when I want to create data. So I'm going to say only when, point to the pop-up project, I'm going to say its project, and then I'm going to say is empty. So if I've clicked on the create button and I haven't displayed data into the pop-up, I've just clicked on create, I'm not pushing any data around, it's just a blank canvas, that's when I want to create data. How cool is this? So now I'm going to copy and paste this block, copy paste. I'm going to change it to orange, green for create, orange for edit, that's the way I do it. And now on the orange block, I'm going to say when it is not empty, so the opposite of is empty, when I have displayed data into that pop-up, well, that means I'm probably wanting to edit data. I wouldn't want to create it, I want to edit it, because data exists, so therefore I'm editing data that I've pushed into the pop-up. So then I would say data things, and I would say make changes to thing, the next one down. Bubble says thing to change. What is it? Well, in relation to the button is in a pop-up, that pop-up has data. So it's parent groups project. Here we go, parent groups project. And I want to change everything. So the description is in the multi-line input because I've made changes to it, the value. And by the way, if you leave one of these blank, it's absolutely fine, Bubble won't change it. It's a differential update. Bubble just looks for where there are changes and goes ahead. Where is the image? Well, it's the picture uploader. Where is the title? Title's value. Okay, and I can just pick this up, take it to step 1. So when there is no project data, we create a project. When there is data, we make changes. Let's try it. So let's go on to, let's do logo design for outward. So let's change the holiday campaign. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to choose outward instead. Logo campaign. And I'm going to change the wording just to start with Greg here, just so we can see the change. And by the way, yes, I can design this so outward is edge to edge. I just don't really have time right now. So if I click save, it's not creating a project, it's editing an existing project. So we'll still have 2. So if I click save, there we go, guys. Outward, logo campaign, there's Greg there. All right, so we've edited. Create, read, update. I guess CRUD, CRED, same thing, editing and updating. Let's finish this off now. Let's finish this off, because once you understand create, read, update, delete, that is the crux. That is the overall point of an application. Airbnb, people create listings. Customers then can read the listings. Listing creators can edit the listings and then delete the listings and leave the platform. Now they've come full circle. Okay, so how do we delete? So it would be a similar thing. So we would start with pushing data into the pop-up, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to take some text. I'm going to drop it beneath the save button. I'm going to say delete. Okay. I'm going to detach the style, put that in the center. I'm going to change it to red, red for danger. Okay, red for destructive. It's got to be red. And I'm just going to design it so it's nice and tight. and I'm going to put it in the center. Okay. I'm going to hide it by default. Why? Because of this. If I refresh the page and I click create, you can't have a delete option when there is no data. There's nothing to delete. So we only want to show the delete when we have data in there. So when we're editing a project, that's when we show delete, because maybe that's part of what they want to do. They don't want to edit it, they want to delete it. So we'll conditionally show it, guys. So on the text delete, I'm going to say not visible on page load, collapse when hidden to remove that space. And then I'm going to say on condition that the parent group's project is not empty. So if there is a project, that's when it's visible. Okay, that's when it's visible. And let's run the workflow while we're here. Very simply, we're going to go to data things, delete thing, delete row in the database, delete object, depending on whether or not you have developer experience. What do I delete? Well, I delete the parent group's project, and then I hide the pop-up because there's nothing else in there. And then I'm going to notify the user that it's been successfully deleted. Successfully deleted. Even though it does disappear from the repeating group, that repeating group could have lots of listings, okay? So you always want to give users some feedback. That would be an error. Let's try it. Let's delete logo campaign. Okay, here it is here, delete. If I hit that, boom, successfully deleted and gone. Yes, guys. If you're still with me, congrats. Thank you for hanging in there. To end this course, we're now going to be doing something a lot more fun. I want to build for you a hero section and a nav bar done to the professional standard that I would do it when I'm building my applications. Okay, so this will be quite a big section. I'm going to have to go through fairly fast, but again, giving you a flavor of what it feels like to build in Bubble. And Bubble is fantastic at design. Ignore the Webflow and Framer people saying Bubble's not great for design. It totally is. You just got to understand how to use it. So let's jump in and look at what we're building. So we're going to build out this hero section part from beginner's camp. All right, we've got a 3-column nav bar. When we get down to mobile sizes, now we've got a 2-column nav bar, much smaller. This hamburger icon or menu icon shows up and these buttons are hidden. All right, text gets smaller. Buttons stack in a column instead of a row that they are here. And then the image gets a little bit smaller and we've got some beautiful 16 pixels of padding all the way around. All right, so let's get going. So I've created a new page and let's start from the very beginning. Here's the page, and I'm going to call it Lander. Naturally, this would be on the index page, all right? Index page is the default naked domain. So for me, buildcamp.io, that goes to my marketing page, of which, we're building a marketing page right now. Straight away, set up my page. I'd set it to column, top to bottom, and I'll change my default width for the UI builder to 1400. And the height we'll decide a bit later. Okay. So we need some text here. All right. So this is unlock your team's potential. And we're going to look at these various containers. So there's a container containing all of this stuff, and then there's another container here. So the first thing, guys, I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my group and I'm just going to drop it on the page. This is going to be called group hero section. Okay, the first thing we do is we lay just a group just so we can mark out this is a hero section. And then when I get to designing the next part of my marketing site, I'll have content section, or community section, or feature section, all the way down to the footer section. So we divide it vertically into sections. And we let them span edge to edge, all right? So this is going to be a column, and I'm going to just remove the fixed width, so it's edge to edge, no min width, and the height, I don't really know at the moment. It depends on the content. The content will set the height, and we will come back and adjust it if we need to. All right, what I'm going to do is just push it down 80 pixels from the top because we're going to use an 80 pixel nav bar at the top. I'm going to add 32 pixels of left-right padding. Okay, the reason why I'm doing that is because when we get to the mobile section, we're going to need padding all the way around. Let's keep referencing this. Got there in the end. Okay, so I'm going to just grab this text first. That's where we're going to start. And here is some text. I'm going to draw it in, and I'm going to paste unlock your team's potential, and then I'm going to set this to a H2. Okay, I'm going to remove the fixed width, and I'm going to remove the min width, and I'm going to remove the min height. And the last thing I'm going to do is on the Appearance tab, I'm going to set that to the center. All right, so after that, we have this like little beta text piece here. So I'm going to grab some text. I dropped it in just above. This will say beta. And I'm going to put that in the center. I'm going to remove the fixed width, remove the min width, but I am going to check fit width to content. Okay, I'm going to remove the min height. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color. So I'm going to choose my brand color here, and then I'm going to set a background style of flat color, which will also be the brand color, but I am going to change the opacity to be 20%. All right, now we need some padding around this bad boy, and let's just have a look at some of the design here. So semi-bold 14, and 8 and 3, okay? So semi-bold 14, first of all, I'm just going to actually detach the style here because it's a one-off. So this is going to be 14. I'm going to change it to semi-bold. And I'm going to, on the layout tab, choose 3 top and bottom on the padding, and then 8 left and right. And I'm going to make it round as well. All right, so I'm just going to say 100. And now I'm going to take these two pieces of text, right-click, group elements in a column container. Oh, what's happened there? Just going to undo that. Ah, it's outside of this. Ah, I see, okay. So I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to drag it into this container, right? This section, group hero section, and then I'm going to make first. Now I'm going to grab both of these together because I want to create another nested group. Okay, I've got the section which is edge to edge, but I actually want to constrain it so it's more centered. And let's just have a look at the settings here. So this group, this is what we're creating here. This is a fixed width of 576 or a max width of 576. So I'm going to pick these two pieces up by highlighting them, and I'm going to say, give me a column container, please, surrounding those two things. This will be called group title. And then I'm going to apply a max width of 576, and then I'm going to recenter it in the center, and I'm going to apply 24 pixels of row gap. There we go. All right, making good progress. Next thing we need is this text over here. So I'm just going to save myself some time by copying this text. I'm going to grab some text and I'm going to put it inside this new container I've just created. I'm just going to draw it in, and naturally it will drop it to the bottom because of our flex settings. All right, and I want that in the center. And on the layout tab, I'm going to remove the fixed width and min width because it's now nested, and now the parent group dictates what that should be. Okay, now I did say we're doing this to professional standards. We're going to be jumping back and forth and making sure that all of our spacing is how it should be. So the spacing between these two elements, that's 12 and 24. Okay, so I'm going to take this text here, I'm going to take beta, right-click, group in another column container, and set this to 12. And in fact, this is the one called title, and this is the one which I'm just going to say is called text. Let's see what's next. So now we have the Learn More button and the Get Started button. And the space between these elements, the gap space, is I get this container, 48. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to grab a button here. I'm just going to drop it in. This will say learn more. I'm going to change my style to secondary large. And on the layout tab, I'm going to make sure that the button hugs the content. The content is learn more. I'm going to remove the min width. I'm going to say fit width to content. And I'm going to use a Bootstrap 48 pixels tool. Perfect. Let's do another button, copy paste. Now this is a different color. This will say get started. All right, the more important button, that's why we're going to use a primary large. And now we're going to take these two guys and put them in a row container because they are on the same x-axis. So row container, this will be called group buttons. And on the layout tab, I'm going to choose some gap spacing of 24 with both ways, because what's going to happen is when it gets down to mobile sizes, the buttons, instead of being next to each other, they're going to be stacked and then edge to edge across the mobile phone side, across the mobile phone screen. So we need to put our row gap and our column gap within this container. All right, and now we can fit width to content, and that will put it in the center after we set the horizontal alignment. And I'm going to go back to the group hero section and set a gap spacing of 48, because that is a container, and then inside is a container which has row gap of 24. Then we have another container with these two guys in, which is 12. So 12, 24, 48. All right, guys, we're cooking on gas. I'm going to highlight group hero section, and I'm going to remove fit height to content because I want it sort of pushed down a bit. Now we're going to grab this image here. Okay, this image. So I'm going to grab an image element, draw it in, and then I'm just going to quickly put it in the center. I'm going to set up some parameters before I upload the image. So I don't want it to be fixed width. This is fluid, but I do want a max width of 992. Now, where do I get this number 992 from? Again, Bootstrap standard, and let me show you another place. So if I head over to the responsive tab, we've got 992. All right, so Bubble has adopted some of the Bootstrap standards here. Now I've already uploaded this image. I could upload it again, or I could just go to the file manager and I could just grab it from here. So I'm going to copy that link so I'm not uploading it twice. And I can just paste it in. Boom, done. Now, obviously, when it comes to images, we need to set the aspect ratio. What do we want this image to fit? And I'm going to head over to the layout tab, and previously, we'll remove the min width first and the min height. Previously, I mentioned that aspect ratio, we have options here. Now we have to, you can set any aspect ratio you want. And the aspect ratio of this image that I created in Figma, it's a screenshot from Beginner's Camp, is actually a 10:7 aspect ratio. So it's arbitrary. You can set any aspect ratio you want. So I'm going to say, if I say 10:7, now I can see that now that it's rendered, it looks a lot better. Okay. Back on this group, I am going to set a fit height. I'm going to remove the min height on the group hero section and set fit height to content, just so that it encompasses this image as well. All right, what about a bit of shadows? But let's just first see how we're getting on here. So if I say lander, okay, so we can't really see the border of this. I didn't put a border on, so we're going to use a shadow here. So I'm going to head over to down to shadow style. I'm going to choose outset. Okay, let's try a spread radius of 20, blur radius of 40. I'm going to change the color of that, and I'm going to set it to about 5%. Getting there, guys. All right. Let's have a look at that. Yep, that looks quite nice. Let's lift it off the page, and let's choose some roundness of, let's choose, let's try 16. No, let's try 12. Yeah, that looks really nice. Let's refresh the page. And look at that, guys. That looks pretty professional. If you're a Webflow person, here's your proof. I've done this very quickly, okay? It's more about your understanding of design rather than the tools. Bubble gives you the tools to do everything you need on the design side. Okay, well, what about responsive design? What about responsive design? Because if I go down here, let's have a look at 768. Looks good. This image is sort of re-rendering. And then down to 320, it doesn't look that good. So let's fix this. But 375 is kind of the adopted responsive size these days. So the first thing I'm going to do is when you're on a mobile phone, so on a desktop, you want more padding, okay? You've got a lot more horizontal space. On a phone, you don't have a lot of space. So someone like Apple, if you go to any Apple website, they use 16 pixels left-right padding because they want to maximize screen space on a phone. That's always what you want to do. Let me show you how I'll do this. So I'm going to add a conditional on group hero section, the main group that's holding all of these other groups plus the image. I'm going to do this. I'm going to say on the condition, I'm going to say page for page width. And by the way, this is a condition that you learn at FlexCamp. And this is the method. This is the method at the moment. Bubble is working on a new way for breakpoints, but I devised this system and is consistent. So if you're looking at this going, wow, that looks complicated. The thing is, you'll be doing it over and over and over again. Just this method, no other method. So I'm going to say page width, and then I'm going to choose a smaller than sign. I'm going to say 576. That's one of the Bootstrap breakpoints. Bubble doesn't include it here for some reason. But I'm going to say 576. That means now we're down to mobile sizes. And I'm going to say when that happens, set the left padding and the right padding. Now watch what happens in the design here. Set it to 16, 16, and 16. Can you see how we've maximized the screen size? There's still some more work to be done because our title text is too large. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to copy this, guys. Copy, save myself some time. I'm going to click on the text element, define another condition on the conditional tab, paste in the expression, and then I'm simply going to say font size. I want the font size to be smaller. So instead of, so let's try 36. Maybe we can choose 48. No, I actually like, let's do 40, 2 lines of text. How nice is that? How nice is that? So we're at desktop sizes, squeeze down, desktop sizes. See, we've got the max width kicking in here. Squeeze down, boom, mobile sizes kicks in. Okay, let's deal with this button now. So I'm just going to double click the group buttons. And the first thing I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to adapt the column here to 12 so these buttons are closer together. And now check this out. Now I'm going to go to the condition here. I'm going to paste in all the same conditions that we used for the other one. So paste condition, current page width is smaller than 576. And I'm actually going to bring it down so you can see it happening in real time. And bring it down here. When that happens, guys, I'm going to say min width of this group. I'm going to change the pixels to percentage and I'm going to say 100%. That's the first thing. Can you see how it spans edge to edge? But we're not quite done. I want these buttons to stack. This is the design I'm after here. Okay, that's the design I'm after. So on each button, I'm going to define conditions. I'm going to paste and I'm going to say exactly the same thing. I want you to be min width 100%. And then I'm just going to actually right click on this button itself. And I'm going to say copy special, copy conditional expressions. And this saves us a bit of time. Click on this button, right click, paste conditional expressions, boom. And our mobile responsive work is done. Check this out. Desktop, tablet, phone. All right, the gap spacing is a bit big as well. So layout tab, 12, one last look, boom. Absolutely love it. Okay, so that's part one, hero section. And you can do all sorts of things like overflows and put things on different axes so they float. There aren't that many limitations. You can do animations with Bubble, a lot of things, okay? But I prefer to keep things fairly simple and just well-designed that people can digest. If you look at Airbnb, Uber, Atlassian, Notion, all of their designs are actually quite simple. They've got no crazy sort of animations because in real life, people just want to see a few things. They want to make sure that they trust you, and good design is actually part of that. They want to get to the information they need as soon as possible, and they don't often want animations to sort of get in the way. They don't want it too flashy. So Bubble can do all of that stuff, but I prefer to keep things simple, well-designed, to the point, fast loading. All right, guys, in this next section, we're going to build out this nav bar. And this is slightly more technical because we're going to be collapsing groups and actually changing the design quite in quite a considerable manner. But we're not going to be creating two separate nav bars. We're just creating the same one, and we're using conditionals to show and hide different elements, change the behavior. And this is where we're going to use a reusable element. All right, let's get started. So over on the UI builder, I'm going to add a new reusable element. I'm going to call this nav bar. I noticed I did have another one, but I'm going to create a new one. Now I left myself 80 pixels of space. So I'm going to go to the layouts, and this is going to be a row, and I'm going to set the width to the same width of the page and the height to 80. Okay. So now we need to divide it into 3 parts. So let's just work on the left-hand side first. Now the first thing is, I don't want the content to stretch to infinity across a big screen. So I don't want like logo on the far left and then buttons on the far right. If you're on a massive screen, it's actually a long way to move your mouse. And if you look at designs like Twitter, they're centered. So it's just easier and faster to navigating. So we need a max width is what I'm trying to say. So we're going to set a max width of 1200 in this nav bar. And when I build up my marketing pages, all of them have max widths in terms of the content of 1200. The screen can be as big as possible, but the content will still be constrained a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab another group. I'm going to draw a group inside. Okay, this will be called group content. And this is going to be a row distributed left to right. And we're going to remove the fixed width. We're going to add our width of 1200, remove our min width, and remember the height's going to be 80. Okay, so back on the nav bar itself, let me just bring up the property editor. I'm going to put that in the center. Okay, so here's the group here. Now this content is going to have 32 pixels left, right, and you guessed it, when we get below 576, we change that to 16 left, right. Okay, let's get it going. So image, let's draw an image in here inside this new container. I'm going to go find that image. That's just a logo, of course. Let's use origin for this case. Copy. And I'm just going to paste that in, and there it is there. Now on the layout tab, I'm going to put this vertically aligned in the center, and I'm going to choose an aspect ratio of 1:1, and I'm going to choose 32 pixels for this bad boy. And that can be fixed as well. You don't want this to change responsively. Now I'm going to pick up some text. I'm going to draw it in. Let's call this origin. Of course, we can drop in a full logo here if you design your own logo. And let's try heading 6 on this guy. And let's drop it in the center and have a look, see, remove the fixed width, remove the min widths, fit width to content, and then let's group these two together because we don't want just elements scattered across the row. We want in terms of parent elements, as less as possible. So even though we have the logo and the logo name, and then we have all the text links in the center, and then we have 2 buttons on the right, I only actually want 3 groups, grouping all of these parts of the nav bar. So I'm going to right click, group elements in a row container because it's on the same axis again. So row again. Okay. I'm going to call this group brand. And I'm going to push these 2 elements apart by adding some column gap of 8. Okay, so that's group brand. And now guys, check what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go copy paste. And this next group is going to be called group links. And then I'm going to simply say copy paste. And the next group is going to be called group buttons. Okay. And then I'm just going to actually delete what's inside here. So hang on. Before I do that, I just need to set a height. I need to set a height here. So let's do 48 on the height. So min height is 48 and min height here is 48. Okay, because we've set that now, I can delete what's in here. And let's grab some text and let's create these links. So the first link is home, then we've got blog, then we've got pricing. So grab a link. First one is home. Styling looks fine so far. Remove the fixed width, remove min width, fit width to content. Then we've got blog. And with these text links, you actually set the page, whether it's internal or external, and you just link up the pages that way. So if I wanted to set this to a page, I could just choose a page here. I could say, send me to the sign up page from this link. Or if I choose external, Bubble then says, we'll just put in the URL here. Okay, I'm not going to put anything in here for now. Actually, I might have to put things in here just because otherwise Bubble will throw an error, and this is purely a design tutorial. But let's just say blog, and let's say pricing here. Okay, now I want to distribute the content in the center. So head over to the Layout tab. First of all, the container alignment needs to be center, and then we can vertically align each one in the center. Now I want more spacing between these elements. So currently we have 8. I'm going to try 12. I'm going to try 16, and I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, now the buttons. I'm going to grab a button. I'm going to go to the final group here. And this is going to say, let's have a look at the design actually. Login and sign up. So this one says log in. And the style was the secondary large. On the Layout tab, let's remove the fixed width, remove the min width, fit width to content, and the height's going to be 48 pixels tall. And lastly, if I copy and paste that button, I can just then adapt the login button to a sign up button with the primary large. And buttons, you can also style links to be buttons as well, but obviously you can't run a workflow off a link. You can only run a workflow off a button. So it's up to you how you'd want to do this, okay? And then on the container alignment for this row, group buttons, I'm going to push it to the right-hand side. Okay, let's just have a look at this responsively to see what's happening here. So if I go down to 992, still looking good. 768, still looking good, but starting to get a little bit tight. I could have more links in here, remember? Go down, and then we'll go down a bit further. Stuff starts to look terrible. So what we're going to do is this. I'm going to go to the group links, because at mobile sizes, we should see the brand group with a menu, mobile menu icon on the right-hand side. So we need to hide the links group and hide the buttons group with conditions. Now, you know what these conditions are. Instead of 576 breakpoints for these conditions, I'm going to use 768 just because of the design. It needs a bit more space. Okay, so let's bring this below 768 so we can see this happening in real terms. So group buttons, what we're going to do is we're going to say page width smaller than 768. Then this element is visible, uncheck. Okay. The last thing we need to do, see that this group buttons is still left here. We won't be able to see it, but it's left in the background. I'm going to say collapse when hidden. There you go. So then this takes its place, sorry. I'm just going to bring it back a second, because I'm going to take what's on this group, right click, copy special, copy conditional expressions. Then on this blog set, the links section, right click, paste special, paste conditional expressions. So now I can see it here, but I also need to collapse when hidden. Now, what do we have? Boom. Okay, almost done. The last thing we need to do is this mobile menu. So I'm just going to go to hero icons quickly and remind myself what it's called. Let's do this one. Let's do bars 3. Okay, on the UI builder, I'm going to grab outline icon. I'm just going to sort of draw it in anywhere. This is going to be bars 3. And let me just do some styling very quickly. 24 pixels in the center. Okay, and I'm just going to push this to the right of this here. Okay, so it's sitting here, or we could actually just make last. Okay, the main thing to remember that we have these 3 groups, and then this bars is sitting outside of these 3 groups, because we're going to hide this group and hide this group. So this needs to be independent, but we're not going to see this on page load. All right, so look at this. We say this element is visible in page load, no, and collapse when hidden. Okay, now it's gone. All right, And I can see it if I only show hideable, I can see it over here. Now I'm going to apply, it's the opposite condition. So if I take this condition here, current page width is smaller than 768, and I paste it in on this mobile menu, now I'm going to say the opposite. Now show to me below 768, show me that icon, because it's not visible in page load. Okay, so if I go to the responsive tab, I come down here, now you can see it. This is it in action, guys. How cool is that? And then off of that, you would decide, well, how do we show these navigation links? Home, blog pricing, login, sign up. What we'd do is we'd build a pop-up here. We're not going to do it now, don't have time, but we would build a pop-up to then show for when a user is on their phone, to then show them the mobile menu with home, blog pricing, login, sign up. All right, guys, let's have a look on the actual design on the site as if a user would see it. We've got a bit more work to be done. Here, sorry, we've got a bit more work to be done. So this is a reusable element. So it's in the reusable elements section on the drop down where we change pages. Let's have a look. So it's down here, this new one that I've just created down here. Let's go to the lander, and this is how it works. Sorry, that's layout. Let's go to the lander. So quite simply, I would just scroll down the left-hand side, find the nav bar I've just created. This is it here. Bubble gives a preview. Click it once, click it again. Beautiful. There we have it. There it is. And then I could go anywhere. I could go to the test page, pick up the nav bar, drop it in. There it is there. And the beautiful thing about these reusable elements is they would also include all of the workflow. So the login workflow, sign up workflow, all of the link clicks. So wherever we drop it on the page, that's all included. So it's almost like its own page, and we can repurpose that little component or reusable element anywhere in our app, but we only edit it from one place. And that's part of the dry, do not repeat yourself method. Okay, let's go back to the lander, and now let's refresh and have a look. Boom. How cool is that? What I want to do is just add a little bit of a line underneath this guy. So I'm going to edit this reusable element. I'm going to head over to the actual nav bar itself, and I'm going to go define each border independently. Go to the bottom, choose solid, and then choose just a light gray, and I've set up my styling already. Let's choose, neutral 200. One last look, guys. Look at that. Pretty amazing. Now we can also get this to float, all right? We would change this to an element type floating group if we wanted this to stay visible at all times. And that's sort of a creative choice whether you want to do that. But at the moment it's a group. It could have been a floating group, and you can put like a little shadow beneath it. You can even conditionally add shadows and underlines or remove them, or change color and scroll, anything you want to do. One last check, guys. Let's bring up Chrome Developer Tools, of which I teach as well, and Buildcamp, and we can just look at some of this stuff. How cool is that? All right, guys, we're going to stop there. I hope you were able to get really good insight from this course overall. Hope you had a good time. Hope you learned a lot. I absolutely love teaching this stuff, so make sure to check out all of my other courses, and hopefully I'll see you at Buildcamp very soon. So if you want to take your bubbling to the next level, potentially look to work for an agency, you'll need to step things up. Now I've talked about Beginner's Camp a lot, probably the best-selling course in Bubble of all time. I've fed over 30,000 students through it, and I've been bubbling for 7 years, okay, building apps for 7 years. So it's a pretty good place to start. After that, you can look at something like Buildcamp, which is a masterclass in responsive design. This is all Bubble, by the way, taking you to some responsive settings here. And look how beautiful all of this layout is. And I teach you a lot more than just using Bubble here. This is about industry standard building for responsive design using Bootstrap and building using design systems, okay? You can even build responsive dashboards. Who would have thought that this is all Bubble? All right, coming down to mobile sizes. Here we are here. Here's our transactions. So that's Buildcamp. That's available right now. Then there's things like Marketplace Camp. I'll just take you through this very quickly. Here is a listing, with a sticky, with a little sticky section over here where you can book, set the number of guests, use the date picker here to decide, and then you can book. By the way, this is fully functional. So this connects to Stripe. It takes real card details. We use test details, but you could launch this as a two-sided marketplace. All right. You would start at the home. You'd do a search down here that would connect to the Google Maps API. Then you can go search. That API key are removed right now, so you can't see the map now. But you could search like listing types. You want a room. You want a number of rooms for. You want particular listings. You want check-in dates, check-out dates. And then you can click through and see the results on the map and also in a repeating group. This covers everything, guys. This covers like account creation, signing up, creating new listings. If I create a new listing over here, this is pretty vast, all right? Pretty vast. So that's Marketplace Camp. SaaS Camp, I think, is my second best seller in terms of courses. And with SaaS Camp, that's a real deep dive into like payments, transactional email, analytics, how to build a fully fledged SaaS application that you can monetize, see external analytics, building dashboards, building storefronts, signing up customers with Stripe Connect, connecting other people's Stripe account to yours. You can start it as a beginner, but you need to do Beginners Camp first. But it is pretty incredible what you can do here. You can see all the transactions here. You can add more products. Here are the products over here. You can edit the products. These could be courses, they could be PDFs, anything you like. So it's a bit like building a Shopify experience, like you build Shopify. All right, so you've got Flex Camp, SaaS Camp, Marketplace Camp, covering all these big sectors, and then Beginners Camp is where you would start. And this is just, everything is built in Bubble here, guys. Everything that you can see is built in Bubble. Waitlist pages before you get started, how to deal with email automation, segmentation, marketing campaigns, transactional emails, all of the kind of payment services that you need. Looks incredible. And if you are serious about becoming a Bubble developer, your next step is Beginners Camp, and then you move on to one of these, and you will be a professional developer within 6 months. Guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Again, I'm Greg. Check out buildcamp.io. Check out the courses. They're often on sale. And hopefully I'll see you in the first course. Take care.